Long ago, when the people of Israel stepped out from the land of Egypt, a land whose tongue was foreign to them, they began more than just a journey across the desert, they were becoming something new. The family of Jacob was transforming into a nation, and in that transformation, they became a place where the presence of God could dwell, a people shaped under his rule. The stories told through generations try to capture this powerful timeless space between their escape from Egypt and their arrival in the Promised Land. It was during these wandering years that their identity was formed, their faith, their laws, and their bond with God all took root and grew. At the center of it all stood Moses, a figure unlike any other. He was not only a guide in matters of faith, but also the first true leader of the people as a nation. Wise beyond measure and honored as the greatest among prophets, he was seen as both teacher and ruler when the tribes gathered together. In the richness of these traditions, no one, not even Abraham, beloved of God, nor Solomon, famed for wisdom, nor Elijah, remembered as a helper in times of need, holds quite the same place as Moses. The foundations of the people's life were tied closely to him. The sacred rhythm of the Sabbath, the building of a dwelling place for God among them, and many of the divine commandments were all connected to his mission. Even the miracle of the manna in the wilderness gave deeper meaning to their last day, turning it into something living and real. Through these acts, Moses' life did not fade into memory. It became part of the daily life of the people. Over time, people sought to understand their traditions by linking them back to these early days. They used symbols to explain what they practiced, seeing deeper meanings in their laws and sacred spaces, like the tabernacle. Though such interpretations go beyond simple storytelling, they became inseparable from the legends themselves. And so, the story of Moses was told not just as history, but as something richer, a blend of memory, meaning, and imagination. In these tales, the past and present were woven together, shaping how the people understood both their origins and their way of life. Chapter 1. Moses in the Wilderness. The night of freedom had come, and the people of Israel were ready to leave Egypt behind. While many rushed to gather treasures left by the Egyptians, one man was thinking of something far more important. That man was Moses. He remembered a promise an ancient one. Long ago, Joseph had made his descendants swear that when God finally delivered them, they would not leave him behind in a foreign land. His bones must be carried home. So while others filled their hands with gold and silver, Moses searched for Joseph. It was not an easy task. Joseph had been buried among kings in a place filled with many tombs. How could one man be found among so many? Just when the search seemed hopeless, Moses received help from his mother Jochebed. She guided him to the exact place. As Moses approached, something strange happened. A sweet fragrance filled the air. In that moment, he knew he had found Joseph. But the challenge was not over. The coffin lay deep beneath the ground, unreachable. Standing above it, Moses called out, reminding Joseph of his own words that God would one day lead his people out and they would carry Joseph with them. As soon as the words were spoken, the earth stirred and the coffin rose to meet him. Yet even then, obstacles remained. Magicians of Egypt had set enchanted guardians, golden dogs beside the coffin. If anyone came near, they let out a terrible cry that echoed across the land. But when Moses approached, he silenced them, exposing their lifeless magic. The noise ceased, and the path was clear. With Joseph's remains finally in his care, Moses returned to the people. Now at last the journey could begin. The Israelites left Egypt without resistance. Even Pharaoh followed them for a distance, making sure they were truly gone. But soon anger filled his heart, and he turned against those who had advised him to let them go. The road ahead, however, was not the shortest one. God did not lead his people straight to the promised land. Instead, he guided them into the vast wilderness. There were many reasons for this. At the mountain of Sinai, they were to receive divine law. Time itself had not yet ripened for them to enter the land, and in the desert, free from daily struggles for survival, they could devote themselves fully to learning and growing in faith. There was another reason too. If they had gone directly, their enemies would have destroyed the land ahead of them, burning fields, poisoning water, and leaving nothing but ruin. Instead, the long years in the wilderness allowed the land to recover, so it would be ready when they arrived. And as the Israelites traveled, miracles surrounded them. These wonders spread fear among the nations, so that when the time came, their enemies had already lost heart. There was also an old oath to consider, one made by Abraham with the Philistines, which could not yet be broken. And beyond that lay a painful memory. Years earlier, a group from the tribe of Ephraim had tried to leave Egypt on their own, without waiting for God's chosen time. Led by courage but not wisdom, they set out toward the land of promise, but their journey ended in disaster. They were met by enemies and completely defeated, their bodies left unburied on the battlefield. God did not want his people to see that sight. If they had, fear might have overcome them, and they might have turned back to Egypt. So the long road to the wilderness was not a delay. It was protection, preparation, and purpose. And through it all, Moses led them, carrying not only the bones of Joseph, but the weight of a nation's future, guiding them step by step toward the destiny that awaited them. At first, everything seemed normal, but soon the officers noticed something troubling. The Israelites were not preparing to return at all. Instead, they were organizing themselves for a long journey as if they never intended to come back. The officers confronted them, demanding obedience. But the people refused. They insisted that they had been set free, not temporarily, but completely. When the officers tried to force them back, a struggle broke out. Some of the Egyptians were struck down, others wounded, and the survivors fled back to Egypt with alarming news. Meanwhile, Moses made an unexpected decision. He did not want their departure to look like a desperate escape. So he ordered the people to turn back slightly, toward a place called Pihahiroth. Many among the Israelites were confused and afraid. Had they come this far only to go back? Some wept in despair. But Moses reassured them they were no longer slaves. Their freedom had already been declared. They camped near a strange place marked by towering rock formations and a shrine known as Baal Zephon. It was the only idol in Egypt that had not been destroyed. This too was part of a greater plan. The Egyptians would believe that their God still had power, and that it was this God holding the Israelites in place. And so the illusion grew stronger. When word reached Pharaoh that the Israelites had no intention of returning, his heart hardened once more. His people were outraged. They had suffered plagues, lost their firstborn, and now their former slaves had walked away with their wealth. The humiliation was too great to bear. Pharaoh decided on war. He went among his people, urging them to rise and pursue. He made bold promises. He would lead them himself, take no greater share of spoils than any man, and reward them richly upon their return. His determination stirred the nation. In his haste, Pharaoh even prepared his own chariot with his own hands, and his nobles followed his example. Soon a vast army assembled his chariots, warriors, and countless soldiers. They advanced with incredible speed, covering in a single day what had taken the Israelites several. But this was no ordinary campaign. They were not marching for treasure. They were marching for destruction. Ahead of them, the Israelites stood trapped. Before them stretched the sea. Behind them thundered the Egyptian army. On either side lay the dangers of the wilderness. Fear spread through the camp like fire. The people turned on Moses in panic. They accused him of leading them into death. They cried out that it would have been better to remain in Egypt than to perish in the desert. Some even remembered earlier tragedies, failed attempts to escape, and feared they would suffer the same fate. The camp divided in confusion. Some wanted to throw themselves into the sea. Others wished to surrender and return to Egypt. Some prepared to fight, and others believed they should shout and create chaos to frighten the enemy. But Moses stood firm. He spoke to each group, calming their fears, correcting their thoughts, and guiding them away from despair. Then he gave them one simple instruction: trust and wait. Still, the danger remained. Moses turned to God in deep desperation, comparing himself to a shepherd who had led his flock into a place with no escape. He saw no path forward, only the sea, the enemy, and the unknown. But God answered him swiftly. "This is not the time for long prayers," came the reply. "My people are in danger. Act, move them forward. Trust that I will provide the way." Even in the heavens, a struggle unfolded. Accusers rose, questioning whether Israel deserved such a miracle. But God defended them, remembering ancient promises made to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob. The time of their deliverance had come. And so, at the edge of the impossible, with fear behind them and uncertainty before them, the people of Israel stood waiting on the brink of a miracle that would change their story forever. Chapter 2. The sea divided. The people of Israel stood at the edge of the sea, fear pressing in from every side. Behind them, the army of Egypt drew closer. Before them, the waters stretched endlessly. And in that moment of uncertainty, Moses lifted his voice in prayer. But the answer came swiftly. "Why do you linger in prayer?" God said. "Your people have already cried out. Now is the time to act. Raise your staff, stretch out your hand, and the sea will open." Moses hesitated. "But the sea has its boundary," he said. "You yourself set limits for it. How can it now be broken?" And the reply came, "From the beginning it was ordained that the waters would yield for my people. Go forward and command it." So Moses stepped toward the roaring sea and spoke with authority, declaring that he came on behalf of the Creator. He commanded the waters to part and make a path. But the sea resisted. "I will not obey," it answered. "You are only a man born long after me. I existed before you. I will not yield." Moses turned back and brought these words before God. Then came the instruction: act with strength. He lifted the staff in his hand, the same staff marked with divine power and memory, and stretched it out over the waters. Still the sea held firm. Moses pleaded again, asking that God command the waters directly. But instead, God allowed a glimpse of his power to accompany Moses, and when the sea beheld that presence, everything changed. Trembling, the waters recoiled. "I do not flee from you," the sea seemed to say, "but from the one who created all things." And in that moment, the impossible happened. The sea split open. Not just that sea, but as the story tells, every body of water everywhere responded. Rivers, wells, jars, and springs all seemed to pause and reflect the same miracle. The world itself held its breath as a path of dry ground appeared through the depths. The Israelites began to walk forward. Walls of water rose on either side of them, towering yet held in place. The passage was safe, guarded. The angel Gabriel stood watch, holding the waters back, ensuring they would not collapse upon the people. It was as if the very elements had been commanded to remember who these travelers were and who they would become. Through the night, a powerful east wind swept across the sea, driving the waters back and keeping the path clear. Behind the Israelites, darkness fell upon the Egyptians, a darkness so thick it bound them in place. They could not move, could not advance, could not strike. Yet in that darkness they saw something astonishing. Ahead, the Israelites stood in light calm, protected, even at peace amid the chaos. Every attempt to harm them failed. Arrows and weapons vanished before reaching their mark, stopped by unseen forces. And so, between darkness and light, between fear and faith, the people of Israel crossed the sea step by step on dry ground, carried forward by a miracle that would be remembered for all time. Morning broke after a night filled with wonder and fear. The sea had begun to open, yet the path was not fully clear. Still, the people of Israel did not hesitate. Their trust was stronger than their fear. Standing at the water's edge, the tribes began to argue not out of pride, but out of devotion. Each wanted the honor of being the first to step into the sea for the sake of God's name. Before the dispute could be settled, the tribe of Benjamin surged forward and entered the waters. The leaders of Judah, feeling that they too should have led the way, reacted in anger and threw stones after them. Yet their anger came not from selfishness, but from a shared desire to be first in showing faith. God saw their intentions and was pleased. Both tribes were rewarded in time. From Benjamin's land would come the resting place of the divine presence, and from Judah would rise the kings of Israel. As the people began to step into danger, Moses was still deep in prayer. But God called out to him, "My beloved are entering the waters. Do not delay. Lift your staff and command the sea." Moses obeyed, and at last the path opened wide. The sea split apart and the people walked through. But what unfolded was far more than a single miracle. A path appeared for each tribe 12 in all so that they could cross side by side. The waters rose high, forming walls that arched above them like a vast shimmering roof. The sea became clear as glass, and each tribe could see the others as they moved forward together. Beneath their feet, the ground was firm and dry. Yet, when the Egyptians would later follow, that same ground would betray them, turning soft and treacherous. The waters themselves seemed alive with purpose. To the Israelites, they offered refreshment cool and sweet to drink. But to their enemies, those same waters would become hard and unyielding, like stone. Even the children felt no fear. When a child cried, it is said that the sea itself provided comfort, offering fruit, as if the wilderness had turned into a garden. The miracle was so aswad-iyam that it could be seen far beyond that place. Nations everywhere beheld it in awe, and not only the living witnessed it. According to the story, the ancestors of Israel, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, along with the matriarchs, were brought to see this moment, to witness the deliverance of their descendants. Yet, even as Israel crossed safely, a great debate unfolded in the heavens. The angel who stood for Egypt pleaded before God, asking why his people should perish. Had Israel not already taken wealth from them? Had enough not been done? Then God spoke, recounting all that had happened, the suffering of his people, the cruelty they endured, the pride and defiance of Egypt, and the refusal of Pharaoh to change even after many chances. The heavenly hosts listened and gave their judgment. Justice must be done. Still, a plea for mercy was raised. For a moment, it seemed compassion might prevail until a final reminder was brought forth. The suffering of innocent children, the cruelty that could not be ignored. At that, the balance turned. Justice would stand. As the last of the Israelites reached the far shore, the stage was set. Behind them, the sea still stood divided, but not for long. The same waters that had opened to save would soon close to judge, and the story of deliverance would become a story of both mercy and justice. Chapter 3. The Destruction of the Egyptians. The last of the Israelites had just stepped onto dry land. Their feet touched safety, their breath steadied. For a moment, there was silence. Then, behind them, movement. The first of the Egyptian soldiers rushed into the path through the sea, chasing with all their strength. Chariots thundered forward, horses plunged into the passage. The army pressed on, determined to reclaim what they had lost. But in that very instant, the sea returned. With a roar that shook the heavens, the walls of water collapsed. The path vanished. Waves crashed together, swallowing chariots, horses, and warriors alike. In a heartbeat, the mighty army was gone. Not one remained. Yet, this was no ordinary defeat. It was as if the world itself had turned against Egypt. As Pharaoh had once chosen the swiftest horse to chase the fleeing people, so now God chose the swiftest force of all like a rushing wind, unseen yet unstoppable. No army could outrun it, no power could resist it. The heavens themselves seemed to join the battle, lightning split the sky. Thunder roared like war drums. Fire fell like arrows. Every weapon the Egyptians raised was answered with something greater. Their formations broke. Their strength failed. Confusion spread through their ranks like a storm. Even their own chariots turned against them. Wheels burned and broke. The ground beneath them became thick and heavy, trapping them where they stood. Horses stumbled. Soldiers fell. What had once been a powerful army became a helpless mass, caught between fear and fate. Still, they struggled. Some tried to flee, others fought wildly, but the sea would not release them. It surged and pulled, rising and falling like a living force, tossing them as easily as grains in a pot. They had come with three intentions: to bring the Israelites back, to strip them of what they carried, or to destroy them completely. Now each plan returned upon them. Some were swept away without a trace. Some were shaken and hurled into the depths. Others were cast down with such force that there was no escape. Even their magic could not save them. The Egyptians had long been masters of secret arts, but now their spells failed. For a brief moment, a few seemed to escape, but the sea itself pursued them, as if remembering its command, and dragged them back. High above, even the unseen powers clashed, and when it was over, there was only the sound of the waves. One figure alone remained: Pharaoh. Cast about by the waters, broken and powerless, he looked upward and finally saw what he had refused to see before. "I was wrong," he cried. "Your God is just. I see it now." The pride that had once filled him was gone. The sea carried him away, leaving behind only his voice, a voice that had changed too late. Meanwhile, on the far shore, the people of Israel stood watching. The sea which had saved them now revealed what it had done. The bodies of the Egyptians were cast upon the shore, one by one. The people looked and recognized them, the men who had once ruled over them, beaten them and made them suffer. Now the balance had changed. Some pointed in silence, some wept, some simply stood, overwhelmed by what they had witnessed. The sea grew quiet again. The earth itself seemed to stir, as if called to complete what had begun. And the story says that even the land hesitated until it was assured that justice had been fulfilled. Then it received the fallen, and all was covered. The wind slowed, the waves settled, and in that stillness the people of Israel understood. They had not just escaped, they had been delivered. The Song at the Sea. The morning sun rose over the Red Sea, casting light on a land that had just been delivered. Israel stood on the shore, hearts pounding with awe, eyes wide with wonder. Behind them the sea had swallowed their oppressors. Before them freedom stretched out like an endless horizon. In that moment, a spirit descended upon the Israelites, the Spirit of God Himself. It filled their souls with a joy so profound that it could not be contained. And then, as if the world itself had taken its cue, they sang. Not one voice stood alone. The elders and the young, the mothers and the children, even those yet unborn in their mothers' wombs, joined together. Their song rose like a mighty river of sound, calling to the heavens. "We glorify the Eternal. We sing of His mercy. He has saved us. He has delivered us." It was a song of triumph, a song of gratitude, a song that moved the heart of God Himself. The angels, poised to sing in His honor, were told to step aside. "My children will sing first," God commanded. And so, for the second time in history, Israel's song rose before that of the angelic host. At first, the people looked to Moses, their leader, urging him to begin. But Moses shook his head with humility. "No," he said, "it is greater honor that the multitude praises God than that one voice leads them." And so the song began, a tapestry of memory and miracle woven into melody. When the Egyptians decreed that we should die in the river, our mothers were spared pain. Angels came down, clothed us in silk, anointed us with care, and nourished us with honey and butter. And when our enemies sought to destroy us, you hid us in your mercy. You delivered us, and now we sing. Moses then took up the song himself, completing the verses where the people left off. Together, leader and flock formed the living chorus, a dialogue of praise. "I will sing unto the Lord, for He has triumphed gloriously," Moses intoned, and the people responded in unison. The horse and his rider he has thrown into the sea. It was a song of deliverance, a song of recognition, a song that celebrated the power and faithfulness of God. Even the smallest child, still in a mother's arms, seemed to hum along, and the angels' voices rose to join the melody, blending heaven and earth in harmony. When the men had finished, the women, led by Miriam, took up timbrels and flutes. They danced, they sang, and the music echoed across the waves. Miriam's voice rang clear, "Sing unto the Lord, for his strength is supreme. He has hurled Pharaoh's chariots into the sea and saved his people from the hand of the wicked." Every note, every word was an act of faith and remembrance. The people recalled every mercy, every miracle, every token of God's care. And in that song, they glimpsed not only their deliverance from Egypt, but the promise of all the miracles yet to come. It was a song that would live forever in the hearts of Israel, song of freedom, of gratitude, and of the eternal covenant between God and his people. A song that, even in the world to come, would rise again as the generations remembered how their God had triumphed at the Red Sea. And in the rising echoes of that chorus, the universe seemed to pause, listening in awe to a people who had witnessed miracles and sung of them with unshakable faith. The trials of the desert. Even after witnessing the Egyptians vanish beneath the waves of the Red Sea, the people of Israel were not free from doubt. Their hearts wavered, their minds restless. "God has led us from Egypt," they murmured among themselves, "only to grant us 5 wonders: wealth, glory, the parting of the sea, vengeance upon our enemies, and a song of praise. Now that all this is done, why not return to Egypt?" Moses' eyes, weary yet steady, met theirs. "The Egyptians you have seen today, you shall see them no more forever," he said. But their murmuring persisted. Even after Pharaoh and his army were gone, they longed to return to the land of their bondage. Only Moses' firm hand, guided by God, restrained them from straying into sin. And so the first trials of the desert began. The Red Sea had cast up its treasures, pearls, jewels, and riches from the drowned Egyptians, and the Israelites lingered enchanted. "Shall the sea always yield such treasures?" Moses asked, his voice patient. With discipline, he led them onward, reminding them that faith, not gold, was their true reward. Soon they entered the wilderness of Shura, vast, hostile land stretching endlessly under the blazing sun. Here the earth teemed with serpents, scorpions, and lizards. Even the shadows of creatures could bring death to the unwary. Stories reached them of King Shapur's armies, swallowed whole by the desert's deadly denizens, leaving nothing behind. And yet Israel walked through this danger unwavering. The snakes and scorpions, sensing the faith of God's people, lay meekly aside, sparing the wanderers harm. For 3 days they marched without complaint, until thirst gnawed at their spirits. Water was scarce, their voices, once full of song, turned to murmurs. "What shall we drink?" they cried. Their eyes sought Moses, but their hearts betrayed them. Even in the shadow of miracles, doubt crept in. Moses lifted his voice to God, asking for mercy on the weak of heart. And swiftly God answered. He instructed Moses to take a piece of the laurel tree, inscribe his holy name upon it, and cast it into the bitter waters. Instantly the water became sweet, drinkable, and life-giving. The people bowed their heads in humility and praise, acknowledging their folly. "Forgive us, O Lord, for our murmuring." But the miracle at Mara was more than quenching thirst. It was a teaching or revelation of divine order. God shared with Israel laws of rest, marriage, and justice, and promised that obedience would bring health and happiness, while straying would invite affliction. From that day, the Israelites learned the importance of faith, study, and constant devotion. Their journey continued to Elim. From a distance, the oasis looked lush with palm trees and 12 wells of water. Yet upon arrival, the sight disappointed, 70 stunted palms and barely enough water for the masses. Still, God provided abundantly for the wandering tribes. Each tribe of Israel, like a well, could flourish if it embraced piety, while the elders, like the palms, stood noble and steadfast, their virtue high and visible, guiding the people. It was here at Elim that Israel first took up the study of the laws given at Marah. Water and trees, desert and oasis became symbols, the sustenance of body and spirit, the lessons of endurance and the path of righteousness. Faith, courage, and obedience transformed the harsh wilderness into a place of learning, preparation, and divine protection. In this dreadful desert, Israel discovered not only survival, but the true meaning of trust in God, the courage to step forward when fear loomed, and the wisdom to drink from the waters of life, bitter or sweet, with gratitude in their hearts. Chapter 4. The Bread from Heaven. For 31 days, the Israelites lived on the bread they had brought from Egypt. But when the supply ran out, despair crept through the camp like a chilling wind. Mothers clutched their children, men gazed over the endless, barren wilderness, and their hearts wavered. "We left Egypt for freedom," they whispered, "but now we face hunger." Promises of a new life turned to empty words. Was our journey nothing but a cruel path to death? In their anguish, they even lamented the past, wishing they had perished in Egypt rather than face this harsh, unknown desert. Moses listened to their cries not with anger, but with sorrow at their wavering faith. He knew that fear often blinds the heart and erases memory, making men forget the miracles they have already witnessed. And yet he forgave them, for the fickleness of the human spirit is no stranger to the divine. God, too, looked upon his people with mercy. Though they murmured, he had prepared aid for them. "Tomorrow," he told Moses, "I will send bread from heaven. Let them eat, and let their faith be renewed." This heavenly provision, called manna, was no ordinary food. It was a gift woven into the fabric of creation itself, prepared since the second day of the world, drawn by angels in the heavenly mills, and now descending to sustain Israel. It was bread of the angels, crafted to nourish the body without burden, to strengthen the spirit without toil. Eating it made one almost like the angels themselves, effortless, pure, and sustained entirely by divine grace. Each morning, as the Israelites slept, God prepared their daily gift. First, a north wind swept the sands clean. Then came a cleansing rain, followed by dew that hardened into a perfect covering for the manna, protecting it like a golden casket. The miraculous bread lay untouched by vermin or dust, waiting for the faithful to gather it, and manna had a wonder beyond its appearance. It changed the desire of the heart. Children tasted milk, young warriors tasted hearty bread, the old tasted sweet honey, and the sick found nourishment in barley soaked in oil and honey. No cooking, no fire, no preparation, yet every taste was complete, perfect, and fulfilling. God also set a law for its gathering. Each day's portion was enough for that day alone. Too much could not be stored. Tomorrow would bring fresh supply. In this way, the people were reminded to trust daily in God, to walk by faith and not by fear. No longer would they rely on the past alone. No longer would despair hold sway. Through this bread, God taught them more than survival. He revealed a rhythm of dependence and trust, a daily communion with the divine, a reminder that sustenance comes not from the hands of men, but from the heart of heaven. In every morsel, Israel tasted care, providence, and love lessons as nourishing as the bread itself. And so, as they wandered the wilderness, their hearts lifted with each dawn. For the bread of heaven fell softly around them, sweet to the taste and firm to the soul, reminding them always, though the desert may be harsh, God's provision is unending and His care eternal. The gathering of heaven's bread. Each morning, before the first light kissed the desert sands, the Israelites would rise with calm hearts. In their tents, they recited their prayers, whispered the Shema, and prepared to meet the miracle awaiting them outside. For as the sun crested the horizon, manna, the miraculous bread of heaven, would fall softly, gleaming like tiny pearls scattered across the sand. For the diligent, gathering it was simple. Even the laziest among them found it landing gently in their hands, as if God Himself had reached down to provide. And when the heat of the day came, the manna melted, but even in its dissolution, it was not lost. From the melted manna flowed streams that would, in the world to come, quench the thirst of the righteous. The eyes of other strangers, kings, and heathens might glimpse the miracle, but to them the taste was bitter. Only indirectly could they enjoy it through the animals that drank from the streams and returned with the sweetness of heaven's provision. The abundance of manna was staggering. Each day enough fell to sustain 60,000 people, yet each received exactly their measure and omer, neither more nor less. Even Joshua, Moses' faithful companion, found himself blessed with more than enough to feed the entire camp. And the manna carried subtle messages, guiding hearts and resolving disputes. If a couple quarreled, the place where the manna fell revealed the truth. Yet not every day brought manna. On Sabbaths and sacred festivals, the heavens held their gift, saving double the portion for the day before. When the Israelites first faced this test, their hearts wavered. Could it be possible that God withheld His blessing on the holy day? Moses reassured them, "Fear not. Today you will not find it in the fields, but tomorrow it will be yours. In this world it rests, in the next it shall never fail." Even so, some could not resist their curiosity and ventured out. Their disobedience was clear, and God instructed Moses to remind the people of all the miracles they had already witnessed: the seas divided, quail sent, waters provided, enemies defeated, and yet still they faltered. "The manna is a gift," Moses told them. "Respect it, trust it, and honor the Sabbath. In return, you will be blessed. The land of Israel, the future world, the Davidic dynasty, the priests and Levites, and relief from the greatest trials." Still, temptation lingered. Dathan and Abiram, men of greed, kept manna for the next day, hoping to defy God's command, but even their secret failed. Worms emerged, traveling in long lines to reveal the misdeed to the entire camp. Justice, it seemed, fell as surely from heaven as the manna itself. To preserve the miracle for future generations, God commanded Moses to place a vessel of manna before the holy ark. Centuries later, the prophet Jeremiah would point to it as proof. "See how the Lord sustained your ancestors. If you dedicate yourselves to Torah, He will sustain you still." Moses also taught them to give thanks. Each morning, manna appeared. In the evenings, God granted another gift: quails thick as a storm cloud, flying low so that the people could easily gather them. Thus the Israelites learned the rhythm of divine care: bread in the morning, meat in the evening, sustenance tempered with lesson and gratitude. And as the children of Israel ate the heavenly bread, their hearts were filled with wonder. For each morsel was a taste of God's mercy, each meal a reminder that even in the endless desert, provision and love descended from the heavens daily without fail. And in this gift they discovered the most profound truth: sustenance is more than food. It is faith, obedience, and the knowledge that they were never truly alone. The water that followed them. Even in the midst of the desert, when bread fell from heaven and quails filled the evening air, the Israelites discovered that sustenance alone could not fill the soul. Their hearts and minds were called to Torah, to the study of law and the pursuit of righteousness. But when they grew careless, neglecting this sacred duty, punishment swiftly followed, not in fire or plague, but in thirst. Once again, the people cried out against Moses, blaming him for leading them into a land of endless sand. "Why have you brought us and our children here?" they lamented. "Why do our cattle and we suffer from thirst?" Moses, patient as ever, lifted his eyes and prayed, "O Lord of the world, if I obey your command, I am doomed. These people are quick to anger, and I fear I shall not survive." And God replied, "Act as I do. Return good for their complaints, forgive their trespasses, and lead them onward. Fear not, for my power will protect you." Heartened, Moses approached the people, and the crowd fell silent, awed by the serenity of their leader. God then instructed Moses to bring some elders to a rock on Mount Horeb. There, with a single strike of his rod, water would gush forth not from an ordinary spring but from the rock itself, a demonstration of divine power. The people chose the rock, and as Moses tapped it with his sapphire rod, a fountain poured abundantly. This place became known as Massa and Meribah, a testament to Israel's testing of God and their eventual trust. Yet this was only the beginning. From this miracle arose a well that never abandoned them, accompanying their wanderings across deserts, over hills, and through valleys. This was Miriam's well, a reward for the merit of the prophetess Miriam. Its waters, flowing from a sieve-like rock, were a living blessing, guiding them wherever they went. The well did more than quench thirst. It formed rivers through the encampment, wide enough for boats to carry goods and treasures. Its waters nurtured every plant, tree, and herb along their path. Fragrant herbs flowed with it, so women needed no perfume. Soft grass spread from it, offering rest to the weary. Whenever the leaders of the 12 tribes approached staffs in hand, they would chant, "Spring up, O well, sink unto it, nobles of the people." Digged it by the direction of the lawgiver, and water would rise like a pillar before them. This miraculous source followed them until they neared the Holy Land, where it quietly disappeared, hidden beneath the Sea of Tiberias. Yet, even centuries later, its presence could be glimpsed a sieve-like rock on Mount Carmel, hinting at the waters that once healed and nourished an entire people. It is said that a leper touching the waters at that sacred spot was healed instantly, a final reminder of Miriam's enduring merit and the mercy of God. And so, the Israelites learned that provision is not merely bread or water, but the living blessings that follow the faithful, the miracles that answer their need, and the faith that transforms complaint into trust. Miriam's well was more than water, it was a guide, a guardian, and a gift from heaven itself. Chapter 5. The enemy of Israel, Amalek's attack. Even after the Israelites had seen miracles beyond imagining, bread raining from heaven, quails filling the evening sky, and water springing from rocks, they still faltered in faith. They doubted whether God could provide for them in every need and grew careless in their devotion to the Torah. And so, a new test came not from the heavens, but from the earth itself. Amalek, a fierce and cunning descendant of Esau, set his sights on Israel. His name whispered fear, swift as locusts, cruel as a predator, and determined to drain the lifeblood of God's chosen. Amalek had waited long. In Egypt he restrained himself, for he knew the debt of servitude Israel owed must be fulfilled first. But now, freed from bondage, Israel marched into the wilderness and Amalek struck. First, he lurked in the shadows, attempting ambush after ambush. Then, when stealth failed, he revealed himself openly, calling all the nations of the heathen to follow him, not to fight, but to witness and perhaps join should he prevail. Clever and cunning, Amalek even used knowledge of Israel's families against them. He called the Israelites by name, inviting them to step out from their camp, with promises of safety and parley. And those who answered were met with death, their bodies mutilated in mockery, as if to spit in the face of the covenant God had made with Abraham. Yet Israel had protection. The holy cloud of God shielded the faithful, but the unclean, the idolaters, the negligent, the unrepentant stood exposed. And so Amalek's attacks found their mark among the sinful, while the pure remained untouched. Moses did not lead the battle himself. Instead, he sent Joshua, a descendant of Joseph, chosen for his righteousness and devotion, for only the descendants of Joseph could confront Esau's line. The other tribes, tainted by past sins, the sale of Joseph, the blood of Shechem, could not hope to prevail on their own. Joseph's descendants, faithful and just, carried God's favor, and led Israel to victory. This conflict was more than a battle of swords. It was a story written in the heavens. Every act of Amalek echoed the consequences of doubt and ingratitude. Every blow Joshua struck was a testament to righteousness prevailing over cruelty, to devotion triumphing over treachery. In the end, the descendants of Joseph were victorious, as history itself attested, the legacy of faith and virtue conquering the shadow of sin and betrayal. And so, the story of Amalek is remembered not just as a war of men, but as a lesson. Doubt invites challenge, faith draws protection, and righteousness will always have the strength to overcome the enemies that test it. Joshua and the defeat of Amalek. The enemy was fierce, cunning, and cruel Amalek. The swift and ruthless descendant of Esau had set his sights on Israel. But God's plan was already in motion. He called upon Joshua, the descendant of Joseph, to lead the battle. Moses approached him not as a master to a student, but with humility and respect. Choose men, Joshua, and go out to fight Amalek. In this, Moses taught that a teacher's honor is shared with his disciple, and that courage grows in those who are trusted. At first, Joshua hesitated. To leave the sheltering cloud of God's glory was to risk everything. But Moses encouraged him, saying, "Step forward, and the crown of leadership awaits you. Take the pious, the faithful, and trust God's protection." And so Joshua rallied his warriors, brave and devoted, and marched against Amalek. Amalek was no ordinary foe. He wielded magic, knowing the fates and fortunes of every man. He struck at the hour of each person's doom, sending death with cunning precision. But Joshua matched him in wisdom and skill, reading the enemy's hour and countering with perfect timing. The battle raged. Joshua stood decisively, but with honor, never mutilating the fallen. Unlike Amalek, who had mocked the covenant of Abraham with every act of cruelty. Head to head, blow for blow, Joshua's sword was swift and just. Yet Joshua's victory was not by sword alone. On a high hill Moses stood, flanked by Aaron and Hur, and lifted his hands to the heavens. O Lord of the world, grant Israel triumph. Let the faith of the people shine as bright as the sun. And as long as Moses' arms remained raised, the Israelites prevailed. When his strength waned, Aaron and Hur lifted his hands for him, and the battle continued. Even as the sun began its descent, victory was not yet assured. Moses prayed that the day might be prolonged, and God held the sun still until Israel crushed Amalek completely. Triumph was theirs, and Moses blessed Joshua. "Some day the sun shall stand still for your battles, as it has today for this one." And indeed, the blessing would come to pass at Gibeon long after. Though Amalek had been beaten, his shadow lingered. The attack revealed the vulnerability of Israel to future enemies, and God vowed that Amalek's descendants would never escape justice. So long as Amalekites lived, the stain of their treachery veiled the face of God, to be removed only when they were utterly destroyed. God commanded that no Amalekite should be welcomed as a proselyte. A warning echoed in the ages when David struck down Amalekite who disguised himself as friend. He honored the eternal command. In the end, Moses built an altar called My Miracle, for the triumph over Amalek was not just Israel's victory. It was a miracle of God's justice and glory. For as long as his people struggle, God suffers with them, and as they triumph, so too does he rejoice. Thus the defeat of Amalek became more than a battle. It became a story of courage, faith, justice, and divine providence, told for generations as a reminder righteousness and trust in God are never in vain. Jethro comes to Israel. The thunder of Amalek's defeat had barely faded when another visitor approached, a man of wealth and renown, yet also a man of misjudged loyalty, Jethro, the priest of Midian. Once he had stood on the side of Pharaoh, urging oppression against Israel, yet now, seeing Amalek crushed and justice done, his heart stirred. There is no path for me but to turn to the God of Israel, he thought. Though he left behind riches and comfort, he set out toward the desert, to Moses and to the God who had wrought wonders for his people. When Jethro reached the edge of Israel's encampment, he could not enter. A cloud of divine glory shrouded the camp, impenetrable to any mortal. Undeterred, he penned a message to Moses, attached it to an arrow, and sent it soaring into the camp. I beg you, for the sake of your God, for your sons, and for my daughter Zipporah, receive me kindly and grant me welcome. Moses hesitated at first, but the voice of God reassured him. Do not reject him. Whoever seeks my shelter must be welcomed. Let him come under the wings of the Shekinah. So Moses, Aaron, Nadab, Abihu, and the 70 elders went out bearing the ark to greet Jethro. Moses bowed, kissed his father-in-law, and welcomed him with respect and humility. Only after this greeting did he recount the story of Israel's deliverance, the exodus from Egypt, the parting of the Red Sea, the manna from heaven, and the water from the rock. He spoke of the miraculous well that followed them, the taste of all foods in the manna, and of the blessings yet to come, Israel's inheritance in the land, the future world, the sovereignty of David, and the priesthood and liberty service. Jethro listened, awed and moved. The mighty deeds of God revealed themselves to him, and the veil of doubt lifted. He felt the tug of faith in his heart, though he mourned for the Egyptians. For no proselyte should rejoice in the fall of the uninitiated, he raised his voice in praise. Blessed be the God who delivered Moses, Aaron, and Israel from Pharaoh, the great dragon. Truly, there is no God like him. He fulfilled his promises and showed his power for all the world to see. To celebrate, Jethro offered a burnt offering near the unconsumed bush and prepared a grand feast. Moses, following the example of Abraham, did not consider it beneath him to serve the guests personally, tending to every need. The people gathered, each tribe at its place, eating and drinking, rejoicing together. Aaron and Jethro sang songs of thanksgiving to God, honoring his providence and grace. And in that joy, gratitude flowed not only to God but to Moses, whose courage, wisdom, and humility had guided Israel through trial after trial. Jethro spoke of the people's valor and of Moses' extraordinary leadership, and in the harmony of song, feast, and blessing, the camp of Israel celebrated both the God who saves and the man who leads. Thus, Jethro, once an enemy of Israel, became a witness to God's glory, and through his conversion, the desert resounded with songs of faith, hope, and thanksgiving. Chapter 6. Moses and the Counsel of Jethro. After Jethro had joined Moses in the desert, he stayed close to his son-in-law for over a year. At first, however, he saw little of Moses in his role as judge, for Moses had been away in heaven from the day of the revelation until the 10th of Tishri. It was only on the 11th day that Jethro witnessed Moses at work, seated like a king on a throne, while the people stood around him from dawn until dusk, waiting for judgments. Jethro frowned. Why do you sit alone while all the people stand before you from morning until night? He asked. Moses replied with quiet humility, It is not for my honor, but for God's. The people come to me to hear the words of God. When disputes arise over what is clean or unclean, or over a disagreement between neighbors, they seek God's guidance through me. And when they leave, the quarrels end and peace is restored. I teach them the law and its meaning, so justice may be done. Still, Jethro observed and shook his head. When the mixed multitude approached Moses with claims to a share of Egypt's spoils, Jethro realized the method, though divinely guided, was not sustainable. With tact and care, he said, What you are doing is not good. The people will wear you out. If you listen to me, God willing, I can show a way for you and Aaron, and for the 70 elders, to lead the people in peace. He continued, You shall be the vessel through which God's revelations are brought to the people. Teach them the law, instruct them in prayer, care for the sick, honor the dead, and maintain justice tempered with compassion. But do not try to bear the burden of judging alone. Choose men of wisdom, God fearing, humble, honest, and known for their integrity. Let them devote themselves to hearing cases and studying the Torah, and peace will dwell among you. Moses welcomed Jethro's counsel, for he knew the strain all too well. The people were quarrelsome and obstinate, arguing over small sums, delaying judgments, and sometimes venting frustration at him personally. If he acted one way, they found fault. If another, still they murmured. Moses sighed, "The people are multiplied like the stars of the heavens. God will bless them 1,000-fold." The Israelites, however, responded, "We do not need a mere blessing. God's blessing is greater than any words a man can offer. Let us see justice administered rightly." So Moses called for the people to propose capable men to serve as judges and leaders. Though some sought the positions for self-interest, Moses discerned the worthy and appointed them. He spoke to them with solemn gravity. "You are now accountable not to yourselves, but to the people of Israel. Judge fairly, without favoritism or fear, wealth or poverty, kinship or strength, beauty or eloquence. These must not sway you. Justice belongs to God, and it is through you that His law is manifested." He instructed them in the procedures of law, both civil and criminal, emphasizing patience, integrity, and the importance of maintaining the respect of the people. A judge who decides rightly is a peacemaker. The well-being of Israel and indeed of all creation depends upon justice. And so, under the guidance of Moses and the wisdom of Jethro, a system of elders was established, laying the foundations for a people governed by law, righteousness, and God's own justice. Jethro rewarded. When Moses set up the elders as judges over Israel, it was not merely obedience to God, it was Jethro's wisdom that had guided him, and Moses, a man of humility and gratitude, did not hide this truth. He told the people openly that it was Jethro's counsel that had lightened his burden, allowing leadership to be shared among worthy men. By honoring his father-in-law in this way, Moses taught that the merits of others are never to be concealed and that wisdom should always be recognized. God too delighted in Jethro's devotion to the Torah. On the very day Jethro first entered the camp of Israel, a miracle occurred. Manna, the daily bread of Israel, descended upon him at noon, the hour of his arrival, and in quantities as plentiful as it had for the entire multitude of Israelites. Jethro did not need to gather it. It fell upon him so abundantly that he only had to lift his hand to eat. This was God's way of rewarding the proselyte who loved the Torah above all else. Still, Jethro did not remain with the Israelites. He longed to return to his homeland where he had family, property, and responsibilities. Moses tried to persuade him to stay, even hinting that the journey to the promised land would be for all who traveled with Israel. He assured Jethro that, as a proselyte, he would be treated with the greatest kindness, even if he would not inherit the land itself. But Jethro was resolute. His duties at home were too great to abandon. He had lent money during the famine caused by the plagues in Egypt, and the trust of his people depended upon his presence. "A candle may shine in the dark, but it is of no use under the sun and moon," he said. "I must return home to illuminate the hearts of my people there, teaching them the ways of the Torah and leading them under God's protection." Moses honored Jethro's decision, showering him with gifts and respect, and Jethro departed, carrying with him the light of God's truth. In his homeland he guided his kinsmen to the Torah and to faith in the one God. Just as he had intended, Jethro's descendants later settled in the fertile lands of Jericho, a gift from the Israelites in recognition of his devotion. For centuries they lived there, dedicating themselves to study, until the temple was finally erected in Jerusalem. They relinquished the land willingly, choosing instead to follow the path of learning. They became known as families devoted entirely to the Torah, the Tirathites, the Shemithites and the Suchathites honored for their piety and scholarship. One descendant, Jonadab, son of Reshab, continued the family's devotion. When warned by a prophet of the temple's destruction, he instructed his children to live austerely: no wine, no anointing, no cutting hair, no dwelling in houses. They obeyed him, and God rewarded them with a covenant that ensured their place among Israel's teachers and leaders, even surpassing the promise made to the house of David. Through Jethro and his descendants, God showed that devotion to his ways, humility, and love of the Torah are rewarded, not for birthright, not for land or wealth, but for the faithfulness of heart. And so, the light of Jethro's wisdom and righteousness continued to shine across generations, guiding Israel in both law and spirit. The time is at hand. Before the momentous revelation on Mount Sinai, Moses sent his father-in-law Jethro back to his homeland. He thought carefully. When God commanded the Passover in Egypt, he said, "No stranger shall partake." Surely, Jethro should not witness the giving of the entire Torah. Moses was right. God intended the Torah to be given only to those who had shared in Israel's hardships. As he said, "He who suffers with the community shall share in their joys, but he who has not shared their struggles shall not partake in their celebration." The timing of the revelation was deliberate. Just as a woman newly freed or a female proselyte waits 3 months before entering marriage, Israel had to wait 3 months after leaving Egypt before uniting fully with God on Sinai. During this period, God showered Israel with gifts: manna, quails, and water from the well, so that the people might come to him fully nourished, body and soul, ready to embrace the Torah. Moses, who had been promised long ago that the Israelites would serve God upon this mountain, watched and longed for that sacred moment, asking day after day, "When will the time arrive?" And God answered, "The time is at hand, and I shall bring forth something entirely new." This new miracle was the healing of the afflicted among the Israelites. God had originally intended to give the Torah immediately after the Exodus, but many among the people were blind, lame, or deaf. And God, who bestows nothing flawed, waited until each one was whole. The sick were healed, the lame walked, the blind saw, and the deaf heard. In this, he foreshadowed the wonders of the future world, when the eyes of the blind shall be opened, the ears of the deaf unstopped, the lame shall leap like a deer, and the tongues of the mute shall sing. Not only were their bodies made whole, but their spirits were elevated, purified by patience, humility, and the merits they had earned. Yet there was another reason for the delay. At the start of their desert journey, the people had been restless and quarrelsome. Harmony among Israel was fragile. Only when the new moon of the 3rd month arrived and the people reached Mount Sinai did peace prevail. Then God declared, "The ways of the Torah are ways of beauty. Its paths are paths of peace. I will give it to a nation that dwells together in love and unity." The choice of the 3rd month held symbolic weight. 3 appears repeatedly in the story of Israel and the Torah. The Torah itself is divided into the Pentateuch prophets and Hagiographa, the oral law, into Midrash Halakha and Haggad, the leaders Moses, Aaron, and Miriam, the divisions of Israel priests, Levites, and laypeople, the 3 patriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Even in history, God has honored the 3rd, Seth among Adam's sons, Shem among Noah's, Solomon among kings, and Moses himself, the 3rd child of his family, from the tribe of Levi, whose name has 3 letters. His infancy was hidden for 3 months, and on the 3rd month, after 3 days of preparation, he received the Torah on a mountain whose name too consists of 3 letters. Everything was aligned, perfected, and prepared. Israel's bodies healed, hearts ready, and the timing divinely ordained. The time was at hand, the moment for the people to meet God and receive his eternal wisdom. The nations refused the Torah. Long before the Torah was given to Israel, the mountain from which it would descend had already earned many names. Some called it the desert sin because God announced his commandments there. Others called it Desert Kadesh, for it was there that Israel was sanctified. It was called Desert Kadmut, where the pre-existing Torah had been revealed, and Desert Paran, where Israel grew and multiplied. Yet the mountain also bore darker names. Sinai, for it marked the beginning of God's judgment against the nations who would reject the Torah, and Horeh, for there he decreed the destruction of those who would not embrace his law. God, in his mercy, first sought to offer his gift to all the nations. He came to each tribe and each people, saying, "Will you accept the Torah, the law I intend to give?" He approached the descendants of Esau. "Will you accept the Torah?" he asked. They inquired cautiously, "What is written in it?" God replied, "Thou shalt not kill." And the descendants of Esau shook their heads. "If we accept this law, will we lose the blessing our father Esau received, that we live by the sword? We will not take your Torah." Next he came to the children of Lot. "Will you accept the Torah?" Again they asked, "What does it say?" God said, "Thou shalt not commit unchastity." They laughed and said, "This is against our very nature. We will not accept your law." Then came the children of Ishmael. "Will you accept the Torah?" They asked what it contained. God said, "Thou shalt not steal." They recoiled. "Will you take from us the blessing promised to our father, that his hand should be against every man?" "No, we cannot take your Torah." One by one, God offered his law to every nation, and one by one, each refused. "We cannot abandon the ways of ours. We will not take your Torah. Give it to your people, Israel." Finally, God turned to Israel. "Will you accept the Torah?" They asked in return, "What is written in it?" God replied, 613 commandments. And Israel responded with courage and faith, "All that the Lord has spoken, we will do and obey." With that, the Israelites declared their devotion. "O Lord of the world, even before you revealed your commandments, our fathers followed your ways. Jacob cast out the strange gods among his sons. Abraham spoke to honor your name and did not take it in vain. Joseph kept the Sabbath holy. Isaac honored his father Abraham on the altar. Judah preserved life over vengeance. Joseph resisted adultery in Potiphar's house. The sons of Jacob refrained from theft. Abraham bore witness to your truth. And Abraham also observed the commandment against coveting, saying, "I will not take even a thread, nor a shoe latchet." Thus Israel stood ready, pure in heart, committed in spirit, and worthy to receive the Torah that would guide them for generations. The nations had refused, but Israel embraced, and in that embrace the covenant between God and his people was sealed. The contest of the mountains. Long before the Torah was revealed, a strange and wondrous contest unfolded among the mountains themselves. Each mountain, proud and lofty, desired the honor of being chosen as the resting place of God's Shekinah. "Upon me shall the Shekinah rest," boasted one mountain. "Mine shall be this glory," cried another. Mount Tabor turned to Mount Hermon, his voice ringing with pride. "Look upon me." When the great flood in Noah's days covered the earth, I alone towered above the waters. Not even my shoulder was submerged. Surely I am worthy to bear the Shekinah. But Mount Hermon, taller and mightier, would not yield. "Think again," he thundered. "When Israel crossed the Red Sea, it was I who made a path for them. Between my slopes they walked on dry land while the waters swirled at their sides, and not a hem of their garments was wet. Surely the Shekinah should rest upon me." Mount Carmel, standing quietly by the sea, said nothing. Yet in its stillness it reflected, "Whether the Shekinah comes to the sea or the land, it will pass by me." Then a voice rang from the heavens, vast and commanding, "Pride shall not bear my glory. I will not place my Shekinah upon mountains that quarrel and look down on one another. I choose humility I choose Sinai, the smallest, the lowliest of all. Upon it shall my presence rest. The other mountains murmured in protest. Lord, are we forgotten? Shall we receive no reward for our zeal? God's voice answered, gentle yet firm, because your heart strove in my honor, I will reward you. Tabor, you shall aid Israel in the days of Deborah. Carmel, you shall lend your strength to Elijah. But Sinai shall receive the Torah, for its humility and purity mark it as worthy. Unlike the others, it has never bowed to idols. Its roots were once part of Mount Moriah, where Isaac was bound as a sacrifice. It is fitting, therefore, that upon this mountain his children shall receive the Torah. And so, the smallest and most unassuming mountain was chosen. Sinai's honor lay not in its height, but in its humility, its purity, and its steadfastness. In the same way, God chose Moses not for wealth nor for rank, but for his humility. When God called him to lead Israel out of Egypt, Moses replied, "Who am I that I should confront Pharaoh?" But God said, "I have chosen you from among all Israel. If not you, then who shall deliver my people?" And when Moses built the tabernacle, he stood outside, hesitant and humble, until God said, "Why do you linger? You are worthy to serve me." Thus it was the Torah found its resting place on a humble mountain, and Israel's guide was a humble man teaching a timeless lesson that greatness is often born not from pride or power, but from devotion, purity, and humility. Chapter 6, The Call at Sinai, a story of a people and a promise. The desert was quiet that morning, so quiet it felt as though the world itself was holding its breath. It was the second day of the third month when Moses heard the call, not once but twice. "Moses, Moses." And as always, he answered without hesitation, "Here I am." Only then did the voice of God unfold before him. A cloud descended, not dark but radiant, and gently lifted Moses upward, carrying him away from the dust of human life into the presence of the divine. This was no ordinary journey, it was the meeting point between heaven and earth. "Go," God said, "and speak first to the women of Israel." Moses paused. This was unexpected. "Speak to them gently," the voice continued, "win their hearts. But to the men, you shall speak with solemn strength and reveal the fullness of my law." There was wisdom in this order. Long ago, when the world was young, a command had been given only to Adam and not to Eve, and that silence had opened the door to human failure. This time would be different. This time, the women would hear first. For God knew something deeply human, that women guard truth carefully, that they nurture it, pass it on, shape the hearts of the next generation. If they embrace the Torah, the future would be anchored. And so Moses descended. He did not go to his family, he did not rest. He went straight to the elders, the keepers of wisdom, and from them to every man and woman among the people. And he spoke. "Do not take my word as mere story," he said. "You have seen with your own eyes what was done in Egypt, not through rumor, not through scrolls, but through your own lives. You saw how a mighty empire fell, not for all its sins, but for the suffering it caused you. And you were carried as if on the wings of eagles." He let those words settle, like seeds in the soil. "Imagine what awaits you now," he continued, his voice rising with hope. "If even before receiving the law, you were shown such miracles, what will come when you live by it? The beginning may feel heavy, change always is, but once you walk this path, it will become part of you. Keep faith, honor the covenant, turn away from false gods, and you will not be just another people. You will be his people." The air trembled with the weight of those words. "All the world belongs to God," Moses said softly, "but you he has chosen, like one who inherits many fields, yet treasures most the one he earned with his own hands. If you remain true," he warned, "no power will rule over you but him. but if you turn away, others will. Then came the promise that lit their hearts. You will be a kingdom of priests, a holy nation. For a moment, the world stood still, and then something remarkable happened. No debate, no hesitation. From every corner of the camp, voices rose, not forced, not fearful, but full of joy. Yes, we will. Each person in their own heart chose it. Moses returned through the cloud to deliver their answer, though God already knew it. But some things are done not out of necessity but out of honor. God listened and then said, I will come to them, not hidden, but in a cloud they can see. What they hear from you will carry the weight of what they hear from me. And through you they will also learn to trust those who come after you. Moses returned once more. This time his tone changed. Before, he had spoken of promise. Now, he spoke of consequence. Know this, he told them. This path carries responsibility. To turn from it is to invite suffering. But the people did not waver. Their desire had only grown stronger. We do not want to hear only through you, they said. We want to hear him ourselves. And then, even more boldly, we want to see, because hearing they knew is not the same as seeing. And God granted both. Prepare yourselves, he commanded, for in 3 days you will stand at the edge of eternity and receive what no people has ever received before. And in the vast silence of Sinai, a nation prepared not just to listen, but to become something entirely new. Before the voice, how a nation prepared, the mountain stood still, silent, waiting. But below it, a people were changing. They had walked out of slavery, but now they were being shaped into something more. Freedom was only the beginning. What lay ahead required preparation, not just of the body, but of the soul. Long before that moment at Sinai, they had already taken their first step. In Egypt, they had marked themselves with a sign of belonging, a covenant carried in their very flesh. Now, 2 days before the great encounter, they were called to cleanse themselves completely. They stepped into water, not just to wash away dust from the desert, but to leave behind who they had been. It was as if they were being reborn. The day before the revelation, Moses gathered the people and wrote down the words of the covenant clear, unhidden, nothing concealed. This was not to be a blind promise. They would know exactly what they were choosing. And then came the morning. The air felt different. Sacrifices were prepared not out of fear, but as a bond, something to seal the invisible with something seen. There were no priests yet. So the elders stepped forward, men of age but not of weakness. With hands that had known years, they worked with the strength of youth, as if time itself had stepped aside for this moment. Moses built an altar at the foot of the mountain. Beside it, 12 pillars rose, one for each tribe, each story, each fragment of a people becoming one. Offerings were brought. Bulls were laid upon the altar, symbols of devotion, of peace, of surrender. And then something extraordinary happened. The blood from the offerings was divided into two equal parts. So perfectly balanced, it seemed beyond human precision. It was as though an unseen hand guided the act, ensuring that not a single drop tipped the scale. One half was set aside for the altar, the other for the people. This, Moses declared, is the bond. He sprinkled the blood upon them, not as something grim but as a sign that they would not trade their purpose for false gods, and that they, in turn, would never be traded or forgotten. A covenant two sides held together. Then Moses did something even more profound. He read the entire teaching aloud, every word, every command, every promise, and every burden. Nothing hidden, because this choice had to be real. And when he finished, the people stood there not confused, not afraid, but ready. Still, heaven hesitated. Is it enough? Came the question. Words are easy. Promises are light. What will hold them to this when life becomes heavy? Bring me a guarantee, God said, a pledge that this covenant will live on. The people answered quickly, "Our ancestors will stand for us." But the reply came just as swiftly. They too had their moments of doubt. "Then our leaders, our prophets, they are not without faults either." A silence fell. This was no small request. What could truly guarantee a future? And then they understood. Not the past, not the present, but the future. "Our children," they said, "we offer our children." And something shifted. "That," came the answer, "is a pledge I will accept." So they gathered families, mothers, fathers, infants in arms, even those not yet born. And in that moment, the boundary between seen and unseen seemed to fade. It was as if even the unborn were called into the conversation. "Will you stand as witnesses?" the divine voice asked. And from beyond the veil of life, a response echoed, "Yes, I am your God. Yes, you shall have no other gods." No, each command met with a clear answer. Each truth accepted, not by the strong, not by the powerful, but by the smallest, the yet to be. And so it was not kings, nor warriors, nor sages who secured the covenant, but children, the promise of tomorrow. And with that, the mountain waited no longer. Chapter 7. The day the world held its breath, the revelation is sine. It began with a silence, but not the kind that comforts, the kind that warns. From the very moment the people reached the foot of Mount Sinai, something changed in the air. A heavy cloud settled over the mountain, not drifting, not passing, but resting, as if guarding a secret too powerful for the world. No one dared to climb, no one dared even to come too close, because deep within them they knew this was no ordinary place anymore. Then came the morning, and with it, unrest. Low rumbles rolled through the mountain like distant thunder awakening from sleep. Lightning tore across the sky in sudden flashes, and a strange sound like a horn. But deeper, older began to rise. Slowly at first, then louder, and louder still, until it filled every space inside them. The earth itself trembled. The sky seemed to bend. It was as though creation was remembering something it had long forgotten. Far away, kings sat in their palaces, shaken by what they felt but could not see. Fear gripped them. Is this the end? They wondered. They turned to a seer, desperate for answers. No, he told them. The world is not ending. This is something else. This is the moment a people is about to receive strength, and with that, their fear softened into awe. But the fear did not belong only to kings. Even the earth itself trembled. It felt the shaking and thought, "Is this the hour of reckoning? Will I now be asked to give account for all that I have hidden within me? The blood of the fallen, the silence of the buried." The earth waited, afraid, until a voice would come. Yet when the moment finally arrived, something unexpected happened. The people were asleep. After nights shortened by summer and days filled with anticipation, they had drifted into a deep, peaceful rest. And while heaven descended, humanity slept. So Moses went among them. "Wake up," he called gently yet urgently. "Rise, the one who calls you is here." Like a bridegroom waiting beneath the canopy. He is waiting for you. One by one they rose, drawn not by force but by something deeper, destiny. Moses led them forward, step by step, until they stood at the edge of the unknown. Then he ascended alone. "Speak," he said, "they are ready." And when he repeated the divine words, his voice carried with a power unlike anything human, clear, vast, echoing as though it belonged to both earth and heaven. Ah! But readiness is not always simple. As the people stood there, something overwhelming occurred. The mountain itself seemed to rise lifted, suspended above them like a vast shadow. And in that moment, they understood this was not just an invitation, it was a turning point. Accept this, the moment seemed to say, and live by it, or turn away and be crushed beneath what you refuse. Fear broke through them. Tears followed, not of despair, but of clarity. And together from every heart came the answer, "We will do, we will listen, we will obey." Ah, and then everything changed. The fear gave way to light. From the heavens, countless beings descended, not in silence, but in celebration. Each person was adorned with something unseen yet deeply felt, a crown of honor, a mark of purpose, a quiet radiance that shone from within. For a moment, they were more than human. They were what they were meant to be, and their faces carried that light. Ah, ah. Above them, the mountain transformed. It was no longer rooted in the earth. It rose upward, its peak stretching into the heavens, wrapped in cloud and fire, touching something infinite. And from every direction, north, south, east, west, presence filled the world. Not from one place, but from everywhere at once. There was no crowding, no chaos, only a vast, ordered stillness, as if every force of creation had come to witness. Check. And yet, just before the voice would speak, Moses was sent down. Not because he was unworthy to stay, but so that no one would mistake the source of what they were about to hear. This moment would belong to no man, only to the divine. Then it happened. The heavens opened, the earth steadied, the waiting ended, and a voice clearer than thunder, deeper than silence, spoke into the soul of a people. And in that moment, the world did not end. It began again. Chapter 7, the first word, when God spoke. There are moments in history when everything else falls silent. This was one of them. St. At the foot of the mountain, a people stood, hearts racing, breath unsteady, souls stretched between fear and wonder. And then a voice, not distant, not faint, but alive, moving, surrounding them. The very first word it spoke was unexpected, Anoki, not in the ancient tongue of their ancestors, but in a language they knew well, the language of the land they had just left behind, Egypt. It was as if the voice was saying, "I will meet you where you are before I take you where you must go." Like a father welcoming a child home from a faraway land, speaking first in the language the child had learned there, just to be understood. And yet, even before the meaning settled in their minds, something deeper stirred in their souls. They recognized it. This was the word their forefathers had spoken of, a word passed down in quiet moments from one generation to the next, a sign. When you hear this word, they had been told, you will know it is Him. And now it had come. Then the voice unfolded, not gently but with a force that shook existence itself. From it burst thunder and lightning, like living fire. Flames seemed to rise on either side, and the sound carried through the air, calling out, my people, I am the one who brought you out of Egypt." The words were not just heard, they were felt. They struck the soul like a wave too vast to stand against. And the people could not bear it. They stumbled backward far, far from where they stood, overwhelmed, undone, as if the very life within them had fled. For a moment there was silence again, not the silence of peace, but of absence. After and then something extraordinary. Life returned. Gently, quietly, like morning dew settling on the earth, a breath, a pulse, a return. As if the same power that had overwhelmed them now restored them, because the message was not meant for the dead, but for the living, did it. Still, the fear lingered, the trembling did not cease. So help came, unseen but deeply felt. Each person was steadied as if a hand rested over their heart, holding it in place, while another lifted their head, allowing them to look up, to see. And in that moment, they witnessed something beyond words. The voice itself became visible, not just sound but presence. It moved toward them, entered their hearing, and spoke not only to their ears but to their very being. Will you accept this path? A path of action woven into every part of your life? And from deep within the answer came, yes. Then again the voice returned, Will you accept its limits, its boundaries, its discipline, measured through time? And again, yes. It was not forced, it was chosen, freely, fully, completely. Then the heavens opened, not just above them, but around them, as if every layer of existence had been pulled back, revealing a truth too vast to ignore. There is nothing else like me. Not above, not below, not anywhere. The message was clear, not just in words, but in experience. You have seen, you have heard. You cannot unknow this. How can one who has witnessed this? The voice seemed to ask, turn away and bow to something lifeless. And then the world stopped. Literally. No bird stopped. Literally. No animal stirred. The wind held its breath. The sea did not move. Even the unseen forces of heaven fell silent. Creation itself paused, as if listening, as if remembering. And into that perfect stillness came the declaration, I am your God. Tip. But this moment did not belong to one people alone. The voice spread far beyond the mountain, far beyond the desert. It reached every corner of the earth, every nation, every language. It spoke in ways each could understand. Yet what was life giving to some was overwhelming to others, because truth, when heard without readiness, can feel like too much to bear. And even more astonishing, this moment was not limited to those standing there. It reached beyond time. Those who had lived, those yet to live, all were somehow present. Every soul, every future voice of wisdom, every story that would ever unfold from this moment, all stood at Sinai, stuck. And yet each experienced it differently. The same voice, but heard in a way each heart could hold. The same presence, but seen in a way each soul could understand. Because truth does not change, but the way we receive it does. And so a final warning echoed gently within them. Do not mistake the many ways you perceive me for many powers. I am one, the same who led you through the sea in strength, the same who now teaches you in stillness. Ok. And there, between silence and sound, fear and wonder, heaven and earth, a people heard the first word, and nothing would ever be the same again. Chapter 8. The mountain burned with a silent fire, not a fire that consumed, but one that revealed. And when the people of Israel answered with a single voice, Yes, we accept, the air itself seemed to change. It was no longer just a gathering of people. It was a moment where heaven leaned close to earth. Then came the voice. As you have accepted me, it said, steady and vast. Now hear what it means to walk with me. A pause followed, as if the world itself was listening. Do not chase the gods of others. They offer nothing. They cannot give life. They cannot restore it. But I hold every breath, every soul, every beginning, and every ending. The warning was not harsh. It was true. I have given you my teaching not to burden you, but to raise you. Do not break what binds us by turning to what is empty. And then something unexpected. I am patient. I do not rush to punish. Even across generations I wait. But those who love me, those who honor me, I remember them far beyond what you can imagine. At that, Moses fell to the ground, not in fear, but in gratitude, because hidden in those words was mercy, the kind that gives humanity room to return, to grow, to change. Then the voice grew firm again. Do not misuse my name, for this was no ordinary command. It was said that when the world was formed, chaos lay beneath it restless, waiting, and over that chaos was placed a sacred seal, marked by the divine name, holding everything in balance. But every careless oath, every false word spoken in that name, loosened that seal, letter by letter, and if nothing restored it, the world itself would begin to unravel. Yet mercy remained, for there was always a quiet repair, unseen, restoring what had been weakened. holding the world together once more. Such was the weight of a single word spoken wrongly. Then, like a shift from thunder to warmth, the voice said, "If you walk in my ways, I will give you something precious, something eternal." The people leaned in. "What is this gift?" "The world that is yet to come." But the people answered honestly, as people always do, "Give us something we can feel now, something we can live." And the reply came almost like a smile in the voice: "The Sabbath, a day unlike the others, a pause in time, a taste of something beyond time." It was said that when creation was complete, the seventh day stood alone and asked, "Why do I have no companion?" And the answer had been, "My people will walk with you." So the Sabbath became not just a command, but a meeting place between the human and the divine. Far away, other nations listened. They nodded at first. "A ruler wants loyalty," they said. "No king shares his throne," they agreed. "No one tolerates false promises," they understood. "And every ruler honors their special day," they accepted. But then they heard something that unsettled them. "Honor your father and your mother." They paused, because this was different. No king had ever asked such a thing, and the voice explained why. "They gave you your body. I gave you your life. Honor them as you honor me." For a human being is not made by one alone. From the father comes strength and structure. From the mother comes warmth and form. And from God comes spirit breath, awareness, understanding, the light within the eyes. Three partners in one life. And when a person honors their parents, heaven itself takes it as a gesture of honor. Then the voice turned to the boundaries that protect life itself. Do not take a life, because every life has a time written for it, and when that time is stolen, the echo does not fade. It waits. Justice waits. Do not betray what is sacred between hearts. Because unfaithfulness does not stay hidden, it spreads, quietly shaping the next generation. Do not steal. Because theft does not only take possessions, it takes trust. And a word without trust begins to starve no matter how much it has. Do not speak falsely against another. Because truth is the foundation of all things, and lies are cracks that weaken everything they touch. And then came the final command, soft, almost hidden. Do not desire what is not yours. It seems small compared to the others, but it wasn't, because desire is where everything begins. A person who lets desire grow unchecked begins to cross lines, first in thought, then in word, then in action. They forget who sees them. They begin to deceive, they harm others, they break trust, they unravel everything. And before they know it, they have broken not one command, but all of them. Taff. The voice faded. The fire dimmed. The mountain stood still once more. But something had changed forever, because what had been given that day was not just a set of commands, it was a map of the human soul, a guide not only for what we do, but for what we become. And those who truly listened understood. These words were not meant to control life, but to protect it, to deepen it, and to lead it towards something eternal. Chapter 9. The Song of the 10 Words. Long ago, when the earth still felt young and the sky seemed closer to human hearts, the people gathered at the foot of Mount Sinai. Thunder rolled. Light flashed. And from the mountain came 10 sacred words etched not just on stone, but into the rhythm of life itself. But what many did not understand was this: they were not 10 separate rules, they were one. Years later, in a quiet village, a wise storyteller sat surrounded by listeners. Among them was a young girl named Miriam who asked, "Why do people say that breaking one command breaks others too?" The old man smiled, as if he had been waiting for that question all his life. "Let me tell you a story," he said. "Imagine," he began, "two tablets of stone placed side by side like two halves of a heart. On one side are the commands that teach us how to love God. On the other, how to live with one another. He drew two lines in the dust, but each command on one side has a reflection on the other. It's T pointed to the first line. To know God, truly know Him, is to recognize His image in every human being. He looked up. So when someone takes a life, they are not just harming a person, they are dishonoring the one who gave that life. Miriam's eyes widened. Uh, the second teaches loyalty to God, he continued. But think, if a heart learns to betray its creator, will it not also betray love? So faithlessness in spirit becomes faithlessness in relationships. Aha! The third command guards the sacredness of God's name, he said softly. But when truth is misused, words lose their meaning, and soon even promises are broken, and what belongs to others is taken by deceit. The fourth speaks of honoring a sacred day, he went on. A rhythm of rest, of trust in what God has done. But when people begin to deny truth, even about creation itself, they begin to harm others with lies. And the fifth, he said gently, cause us to honor our parents, because they are the beginning of our story. He paused. But when desire wanders where it should not, families are broken and children grow without knowing truth, without knowing where they belong. Ho 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 ho. Miriam sat very still. So each command protects another? She whispered. The old man nodded, like threads in a single cloth. Pull one loose and the whole fabric begins to unravel. Ekship. Then his voice grew deeper, filled with wonder. But there is something even more beautiful. These 10 words did not begin on stone. They began at the beginning of the word. He lifted his hand toward the sky. When light first broke through the darkness, it revealed the presence of the Creator. That is why the first command calls us to know Him. When the waters were divided, a choice was formed between what gives life and what does not. That is why we are called to choose God over all false things. That when the seas were gathered, they showed that what is broken cannot hold what is true. That is why words must not be misused or emptied of meaning. Iksie. When the earth brought forth life freely, it revealed a hidden gift that not everything must be earned by struggle. That is why a sacred rest was given. In Hippie, when lights were placed in the heavens, they became guides in the darkness, just as parents are given to guide a child. That is why they must be honored. Timmy. His voice grew firm now. When the waters filled with living creatures, there was a warning hidden within them. Do not become like those who consume the weak. That is why life must not be destroyed. When living beings were created each according to their kind, a sacred bond was formed. That is why love must remain faithful. When the earth offered its gifts, it showed that what is given is enough and not meant to be taken from another. That is why stealing breaks the harmony of the world. When humanity was created in the image of God, it gave every person dignity and truth. That is why false witness wounds more than words, it wounds that image. And when companionship was given, it was meant to be honored, not desired from afar. That is why we must guard our hearts from coveting what belongs to another. Ati? The night had grown quiet. The stars shimmered above them. Daft. Miriam looked up and asked softly, so the commandments are really a reflection of creation itself? The old storyteller smiled. Yes, he said. They are the same song sung at the beginning and sung again on the mountain. And if someone forgets one part of the song, she asked, he looked at her kindly. Then the melody falters. Miriam closed her eyes, imagining the world as a great harmony where every command, every act, every choice was a note. And for the first time, she understood the 10 commandments were never meant to stand alone. They were meant to live together, like light and truth, like love and faithfulness, like creation itself. Chapter 10. The day they chose a voice between. The mountains still burned. At the foot of Mount Sinai, the people of Israel stood in stunned silence, their hearts racing from what they had just witnessed. They had heard the Ten Commandments directly from God, and in that moment, many of them believed almost eagerly. Now the rest will follow. Now all the divine teaching will be given to us. But what they had already experienced was far greater than they understood. For this was no ordinary hearing. They had seen sound and heard light. The invisible had become visible. The distant had come near. Even the lowest among them, servants, laborers, those unnoticed by the world, had perceived truth with a clarity so powerful that, in later generations, even the greatest prophets would not reach such vision. But such closeness came with a cost. Their strength failed, their souls felt overwhelmed, and a deep fear rose within them. If one more word is spoken like this, we will not survive. Aksepek. So they gathered and went to Moses, not in rebellion but in humility and need. You must go in our place, they said. Stand between us and God. You listen and then tell us, because we cannot bear his voice any longer. Moses brought their plea before God, and the answer came with approval. What they have said is right. There was even a hint of compassion. If it were possible, I would remove even death from among them. But what has already been decreed for humanity must remain. Then God said, Go tell them to return to their tents, but you remain here with me. Ah! The people understood the meaning behind these words. For 3 days they had held themselves apart, preparing for the encounter. Now they were permitted to return to family life, to closeness, to the ordinary rhythms of being human. But Moses was set apart. He would remain near God, living a life that required him to give up many earthly comforts others could still enjoy. Seeing the people still shaken, Moses spoke with wisdom. God has given you his teaching and shown you wonders, he said, so that through them you may be lifted and distinguished among all nations. Until now you did not fully know, your ignorance gave you excuse. But now you understand clearly what is right and what is not. You know that goodness will be rewarded and wrongdoing will not go unanswered. He looked at them carefully. And as long as you carry a sense of humility, a feeling that restrains you, you will not easily fall into sin. Oh, his words calmed them, and slowly the people withdrew, moving far from the mountain until its fire became distant. But Moses stepped forward, closer. I. Shh. It was said that near God dwell the souls of the righteous. Beyond them stand mercy and justice. And Moses was allowed to stand near that sacred nearness. His vision was unlike that of any other. Where others would one day see dimly, Moses saw clearly. Where others would lose awareness in prophecy, Moses remained fully conscious. And when God revealed himself, it was often through a pillar of cloud, hidden yet unmistakably present. Th- th- the people felt something they could not ignore. They remembered the first words they had heard directly, I am the eternal your God. Those words had entered their hearts so deeply that they could never forget them. But the teachings given through Moses, though true, did not remain with the same permanence. For human beings are fleeting, and even the words they pass on can fade. So they came again to Moses, longing in their voices. If only God would speak to us once more. If only we could feel that closeness again. If only his words would remain within us as they did before. Ah! Moses answered gently, that cannot be now. But there will come a time when his teaching will no longer be outside you. It will be placed within you, written upon your hearts. Ah! Then they spoke again with another sorrow. When we heard the command not to follow other gods, something changed inside us. The urge toward wrongdoing was removed from our hearts. But when we asked you to stand between us and God, it returned. They looked at him with hope. Can it be taken away again? Moses shook his head softly. Not now, but in the future, even that will be healed. The hardness within you will be taken away. Even so, the moment at the mountain left a lasting mark. Though they had heard only part of the commandments directly, the divine encounter transformed them. Their lives carried a rare purity, untouched by the corruption common to others. Even in death, their bodies remained free from decay. And so they lived, a people who had come closer than any before, yet chosen distance to endure. And Moses, he remained between both worlds, close enough to hear the divine clearly, strong enough to bear it, faithful enough to carry it back, not only a prophet, but the one chosen to stand between the infinite voice of God and the fragile hearts of humanity. Chapter 11. When heaven questioned Moses, the day the world changed did not end like other days. At Mount Sinai, time itself seemed to stretch as if the sun refused to set, unwilling to close the moment when heaven had touched earth. And when that long, unending day finally faded, Moses began to climb. For days he prepared himself, not with weapons, not with strength, but by letting go of everything earthly, every trace of human limitation. He was not just climbing a mountain anymore. He was preparing to step beyond it. Then came the moment. A cloud descended alive, waiting. Moses stood before it unsure. Do I hold it or does it carry me? Before he could decide, the cloud opened like a doorway, and he stepped inside, sick. Suddenly, he was no longer walking on earth. He was moving through the heavens as naturally as a man walks through a field. But he was not alone. At the gate stood a towering being, an angel of fierce presence, guardian of countless hosts. Son of man, the angel thundered, what are you doing here in a place of fire? Moses steadied himself. I come not by my own will, he answered. I come because I was sent to receive the Torah and bring it to my people. The path was not easily opened. Every step forward was tested, every word challenged. As he continued, another presence rose before him, greater, more overwhelming. Its voice shook the very air. Moses trembled. For a moment fear nearly overcame him. But then something unseen held him steady. A voice not harsh but filled with authority spoke above all others. Let him pass. He comes by my will. I can't. And so Moses continued, deeper, higher, closer, taunt. He came to a place where even angels hesitated, a realm of fire so vast, so intense, that even the heavenly beings dared not linger there. He saw power beyond imagining, forces that shaped worship itself. Voices rose like thunder. Holy, holy, holy. The heavens trembled with their praise. Even the foundations of the unseen seemed to shake. Moses felt himself falter. Fear surged again, but this time something greater happened. God himself drew near, shielding him, guiding him forward through what no human could endure alone. Beyond that, he crossed a river not of water, but of fire, a living stream burning and renewing itself endlessly. Even angels were consumed and restored within it, but Moses passed through unharmed, carried, protected. He moved further still, past beings who knew secrets of creation, past watchers of hidden things, past powers that shaped kings and nations. Each time he trembled, each time he was guided forward. And then he reached the throne. And then he reached the throne. There, the mightiest of angels surrounded it, beams of awe, of fire, of overwhelming presence. They saw him, and they questioned him. What is this? They said, a human, here. What does one born of dust seek in heaven? Cap. And the answer came, he has come to receive the Torah. Give it to us instead. They said, let the Torah remain in heaven among the pure. What need have humans fragile, flawed of such a treasure? Ah. Then Moses spoke, not loudly, but with truth that could not be shaken. The Torah speaks of freedom from slavery, he said. Were you ever enslaved? It commands turning away from false gods. Do you struggle with such things? It teaches honesty in speech, rest from labor, honor for parents. He paused. Do you work? Do you tire? Do you have parents to honor? It forbids killing, betrayal, stealing, falsehood, envy. His voice grew steady. Do such struggles exist among you? Silence fell. The angels had no answer because the Torah was not written for heaven, it was written for earth. And in that moment they understood. They stepped back, not in defeat but in recognition, and they said, how great is your name in all the earth. Dot. Moses remained there for 40 days, learning, receiving, understanding. But when the time came to return, and he saw again the vast hosts of angels, their power, their intensity, fear overtook him, and for a moment he forgot everything he had learned. But heaven was not finished with him. The knowledge was given back restored, complete, and something unexpected happened. The angels who once resisted him now came close, not as challengers but as companions, each one offering something, a secret, a wisdom, a healing. Even the angel of death gave him knowledge how life might be preserved. And so Moses descended, not just with words written on stone, but with understanding, with hidden wisdom, with gifts from heaven itself. Est.hip. He returned to earth, to his people, to a world that needed what heaven could not keep. Hip. Because the Torah was never meant to remain above, it was meant to be lived below. When Moses received the Torah high above the world, beyond sight and sound, Moses stood in a place no human had ever truly entered before. He had reached heaven, and what he saw was not what he expected. God was there not in thunder, not in fire, but quietly, carefully writing. Upon the letters of the Torah, he was placing tiny crowns, delicate markings, as though each letter carried a hidden depth beyond its form. Moses watched in silence, until a voice broke the stillness. In your word, do you not greet one another? Moses lowered his gaze. Is it fitting, he replied softly, for a servant to greet his master? There was a pause. Then came the gentle reply. You could have at least wished me success in my work. And so Moses spoke. May your greatness be revealed as you have declared. Yet his curiosity stirred. What do these crowns mean? He asked. And God answered. One day there will be a man Rabbi Akiva who will draw mountains of meaning from even these smallest marks. Moses was amazed. Show him to me. Come. In an instant he was no longer where he stood. He found himself seated far back 18 rows behind a teacher, surrounded by students. They spoke deeply, passionately, but Moses could not understand. The words felt distant, beyond his grasp. His heart sank. Is this the wisdom that comes from the Torah I am to receive, and I cannot even follow it? Then he heard a student ask, Teacher, how do you know this? And the teacher answered, This is a teaching given to Moses at Sinai. At that moment, Moses felt peace return. Even what he did not understand was still connected to him. He returned at Jan to speak, You have such a man, and yet you give the Torah through me? And the answer came, firm and quiet, This is my decree. Ah! But Moses was not finished. Then let me see his reward. What he saw next shook him. He saw the great teacher suffering, his life ending in a way that seemed unbearable. Moses cried out, Is this the reward for such greatness? Again came the answer, This is my decree. and no more was said. Time passed. Moses continued to learn. He saw a word written long suffering. He asked, "Is this patience only for the righteous?" "No," came the reply, "for sinners as well." Moses struggled with this. "Then let the wicked be destroyed," he said. But later, when he would plead for his people, he would remember those very words, and he would say, "Let your patience be as great as you have declared." Ah, for 40 days and 40 nights, Moses remained there, learning everything, the written teachings, the spoken teachings, even the insights that future generations would one day discover. By day, he learned one kind of wisdom, by night, another. In heaven, there was no clear dividing line between the two. Yet Moses learned to recognize time by signs, the songs of angels, the rhythm of their service, the quiet falling of manna prepared for earth. Quiet. God showed him wonders, the structure of the heavens, the beauty of the celestial sanctuary, even the colors he would one day use to build a sacred dwelling below. When Moses struggled to remember them, he was shown living examples, angels clothed in shades of blue, crimson, purple, and white, until the colors were no longer forgotten. And yet, something strange happened. Despite all this learning, Moses kept forgetting, again and again, until at last he cried out, "40 days I have been here, and I cannot hold on to what I am taught." Then, in mercy, God did something different. He did not just teach Moses the Torah, he gave it to him. And from that moment on, Moses remembered, at last, it was time to descend. But even as he left, another story unfolded. Far below, a restless being searched, looking everywhere for the Torah. Through earth, through sea, through the depths, but it could not be found. Finally, the answer came, "Go to the son of Amram." Oh, and so he came to Moses. "Where is the Torah?" he demanded. Moses answered with humility, "Who am I that such a treasure should belong to me?" A voice spoke, "You speak as if it is not yours." Moses replied, "How can I claim as mine what delights you each day?" And because of that humility, a gift was given. The Torah would forever bear his name. Then came the moment of return. Moses descended, carrying the tablets not made by human hands, but formed by God Himself. They shone like sapphire. The words upon them were alive etched in such a way that they could be read from both sides. Within them lay not just commandments, but the fullness of divine teaching. God held the upper part. Moses held the lower. And between them, a space where heaven touched earth. Through that connection, a radiant light passed into Moses. And when he came down, his face shone. He had gone up as a man seeking. He returned up as a man seeking. He returned as one who carried something eternal. Not just words, not just laws, but a living gift meant not for heaven, but for the hearts of humanity. Chapter 11. The Golden Calf. When faith was tested, at the foot of Mount Sinai, a moment of unmatched joy once filled the air. The people of Israel had seen wonders. They had heard the voice of God, and their hearts overflowed. They sang. They rejoiced. Their faith in that moment felt unshakable, so strong that only a distant future age would ever compare to it. Even the heavens joined in their joy, but not God. While voices of celebration rose from earth and heaven alike, God's voice came from darkness, quiet, heavy, filled with sorrow. The angels were puzzled. "Why is there sadness?" they asked, "when all creation rejoices?" And the answer came, "You see this moment, but I see what is yet to come." Up, that in only 40 days, the same people who now stood in perfect faith would turn away and bow before a golden idol. After 40 days, I will return. But time for a waiting heart can become a burden. And on the 40th day, as the sun reached its height, confusion entered the camp. a vision appeared. Moses, lifeless, suspended between heaven and earth. The people stared in shock. "This is the man who led us," they said, "and now he is gone." Ugh. Fear spread quickly, and fear, when left unchecked, seeks something to hold on to. They turned to Aaron. "Make us something we can see," they demanded. "A God we can stand before, like the nations we once knew." Stop! There was resistance. Voices tried to remind them of all they had witnessed, the miracles, the deliverance, the truth they had seen with their own eyes. But fear had already taken root, and in that moment of chaos, a righteous man stood against them and fell. His courage cost him his life. Aaron now faced a terrible choice, not for his own safety, but for the soul of the people. If they go further, he thought, if they commit even greater wrong, they may never return. So he delayed. "Bring the ornaments," he said, "but not just any ornaments. Bring those of your wives, your sons, your daughters." He hoped they would refuse, and indeed the women did. They would not give their gold for something false, and for that fate they would one day be honored. Gold was gathered, fire was lit, and something unexpected happened. From the flames, an image emerged, a calf of gold shining, alive in its movement. Dot. A murmur spread through the crowd. This is your God," voices cried. The confusion deepened, truth blurred, and slowly what began as fear became belief. Some still resisted. Leaders stood firm, refusing to bow, and for their faithfulness they paid with their lives. But many turned, not just to one idol, but to many, and even the very gift sent from heaven to sustain them, they offered to these lifeless forms. Ah, why a calf? Why this image? Because once, in a moment of divine vision, they had glimpsed something beyond this world. Among the heavenly forms, one stood clear, a powerful ox like presence. And in their misunderstanding, they believed perhaps this helped bring us out of Egypt. And so they tried to honor it. But in doing so, they lost sight of the one behind it all. Te. Aaron tried again to delay them. "I will build the altar," he said, hoping time would stretch, hoping Moses would return. But time did not bend that day. Morning came, the altar stood, and the people gathered. Sibbatim. What followed was not just worship, but a loss of restraint, a turning away not only in belief but in action. Duh. And far above, Moses was still on the mountain, receiving the very law that was meant to guide them, unaware that below everything was changing. This was not just a mistake, it was a moment that would echo through generations. A reminder that even after the greatest clarity, the human heart can still wander. Yet, even in this, the story does not end, because the same God who foresaw the fall also prepared the path for return. Chapter 12. When Moses stood alone for his people, high above the earth, in the stillness of heaven, Moses was still standing before God. Below, at Mount Sinai, the people had turned away, their hearts drawn toward the golden calf. But Moses did not yet see it. Then the voice came firm, heavy with disappointment. "Go down. Your people, the ones you brought out of Egypt, have corrupted themselves." Ah, Taff. Those words struck deeply. Your people, not my people. Moses felt the weight of them. Taff. As he turned to descend, something changed. Until that moment, he had stood above even the angels. But now, because of the people's sin, he felt their presence differently. The angels stirred, some rose in anger. Why should he remain here, they thought. When his people have fallen so low, they moved toward him. And Moses, for the first time, felt fear. He fled not away, but upward, clinging tightly to the very throne of God. And God, in mercy, covered him, shielding him from harm. Without that protection, he would not have survived their fury. But the danger was not over. 5 terrible forces had been released, agents of destruction, sent to bring judgment upon Israel. Moses knew what this meant. There was no time to hesitate. He called out not to earth, but to the past, to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the fathers of the people. Stand with me, he cried. Your children are in danger. Do not let them be lost. And together their voices rose. Moses pleaded, did you not promise them descendants as countless as the stars? Will all that now be undone? Something shifted. 3 of the forces of destruction withdrew, but 2 remained, still threatening, still near. Moses did not stop. For the promises made, he said, let mercy rise again. 1 more was taken away, only 1 remained. Ha ha ha! This last force was fierce, unyielding, but Moses stood firm. And with strength not his own, he overcame it, casting it down, holding it in place so it could not rise again. As long as he lived, it would remain bound. Talk! Yet even after facing these powers, the greater struggle still remained. God's anger. The voice returned, this time sharper, go down. It is fitting. When I once saw the sins of men, I came down to see for myself. So now you go. Only because of Israel did you stand here, but now why should you remain? Hot pot. Moses did not retreat. He stepped forward. Not long ago, he said, you sent me to bring your people out of Egypt. And now you call them mine? He lifted his voice. Whether they are faithful or not, they are still your people. God answered, I will destroy them, and from you I will build a new nation. The offer hung in the air, greatness, a new beginning. But Moses refused it. If a strong foundation cannot stand, he said, how will a weaker one endure? He would not replace his people. He would stand for them. And so began his plea. He reminded God of their faith, their willingness, their moments of devotion. Each time an answer came back, they have turned, they have failed, they have fallen. Then came a harder truth. Moses, God said, you brought with you those who did not belong, those who joined from outside. They are the ones who led this rebellion. They are your people. Sung! For a moment, even Moses felt the weight of that blame. His own compassion, his own choice, had opened the door, and now it seemed everything was lost. Tough, but then a change. The tone softened. Not fully, but enough. I knew, God said quietly, even before all this, what would happen. I saw this moment long ago. Moses understood. This was not final judgment. This was a moment waiting for mercy to be asked. So he spoke again boldly now. If this idol is nothing, why should your anger burn so fiercely? And if some led them astray, why should all be destroyed? He stepped closer. Look at those who remained faithful, Aaron, Joshua, Caleb, and many others. Let their righteousness stand for the rest. But there was still one barrier. A vow had been spoken, and a vow once declared could not easily be taken back. Then Moses did something no one had ever done before. He took the very law God had given and turned it toward God himself. You have taught us, he said, that a vow may be released, that even a binding word can be lifted through wisdom. Sap. He wrapped himself in his garment, sat as one who judges, and spoke with courage. Let regret be spoken. Let mercy rise. And in that moment the unthinkable happened. The decree was lifted. The destruction held back. And Moses had stood alone between heaven's justice and humanity's failure, and he did not move. Because to him they were not just a people who had fallen. they were still worth saving. The day justice fell in the camp, the mountain was behind him now. After 40 days in heaven, Moses began his descent from Mount Sinai, and waiting for him, faithful, unmoving, stood Joshua, who had remained there all that time, never leaving his place. Together they walked toward the camp below. Then they heard it, a sound rising from the distance, loud, chaotic. Joshua listened carefully. "It sounds like war," he said, but Moses shook his head. "No," he answered quietly. "This is neither victory nor defeat." He paused. "It is something far worse. Ark ish." As they came closer, the truth became clear. The people were not fighting, they were celebrating, dancing, singing before an idol. Ish. Moses stopped. In his hands were the tablets, the very gift of heaven, and the thought struck him deeply. How can I place these into their hands when they are breaking the very first of them? For a moment he turned back, as if to retreat, as if to hold the sacred words away from unworthy hands. But the elders followed him. They reached for the tablets, trying to take them. Yet Moses held firm. Though they were heavy far beyond what any man should carry, he did not let go. Then something changed. The writing upon the tablets faded. The divine letters vanished, and suddenly their weight became real. What had once carried itself now pressed down upon him. Moses understood. Without the living word within them, they were no longer the same. And in that moment, he made a decision. Not commanded, not instructed, but chosen. Shodeft. He lifted the tablets and shattered them. Ho 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 ho. The sound echoed. A breaking not just of stone, but of a moment that could not be restored. Huh. And yet this act was not condemned. It was accepted, even affirmed. But the consequences did not end there. The world itself seemed to react. The waters stirred. The sea rose as if ready to leave its place and cover the earth, as if creation itself could not bear what had happened. Moses moved quickly. He took the golden calf, burned it, crushed it into dust, and scattered it upon the water. Then he spoke to the waters, "Why do you rise?" And the answer came, "The world stands upon faithfulness to the law, and now that faithfulness has been broken." Ugh! Moses answered, "Let those who have turned away be given to you. Will that satisfy you?" Ugh! But the waters did not withdraw. Not yet. Only after the people drank from them, facing the truth of what they had done, did the waters return to their place. Then came the moment of decision. Moses stood before the camp and called out, "Whoever stands with the Lord, come to me." From among all the people, one group stepped forward. The sons of Levi. They had not bowed, they had not turned. To them, Moses gave a difficult task: to bring justice, to act swiftly, to confront those who had openly defied what they knew was right. But in a moment where the entire community stood at the edge between truth and destruction, or some were judged by witness, some faced the consequence through the waters they had drunk, and for others whose guilt was unseen, judgment came in another way. It was a day of sorrow, a day of loss, a day of loss, a day when actions could not be undone. But it was also a turning point, a moment when a people were forced to see clearly what happens when truth is abandoned. And at the center of it all stood Moses, not only as a leader, but as one who carried both mercy and justice, holding a broken people together. Moses intercedes for the people. The camp had fallen silent. Only hours before, cries of judgment had echoed through the air. Now a heavy stillness lay upon Israel, a silence filled with grief, fear, and unanswered questions. 3,000 had fallen, and Moses stood between heaven and earth, carrying the weight of an entire nation. Ha ha ha! He lifted his eyes toward the unseen, his voice trembling, not with fear, but with compassion. Lord, you are just, your ways are true, but must an entire people suffer for the sin of a few? He paused, as if listening to the silence itself. Hundreds of thousands stand here, and yet only a fraction have fallen. Will all be swept away for the fault of 3,000? There was no thunder, no immediate reply. So Moses did what few would dare. He stepped closer, not physically, but in spirit, and pleaded. It's sick. Days passed, then more days. Moses climbed again into the presence of God, not to receive but to beg, not for himself, for them, though he spoke with a boldness born of love. The calf is gone. The wrongdoers have been judged. What remains now to stand between you and your people? Then his voice softened, almost breaking. They stumbled, yes. But were they not also given abundance, gold, silver, blessings beyond measure? Their weakness grew in the shadow of your gifts. And then, in a moment that seemed to stop time itself, Moses said words no leader had ever spoken. If you will forgive them, then forgive. But if not, he took a breath, then erase me as well. Sip. It was not rebellion, it was not pride. It was love so deep that he chose to stand or fall with his people. Ah, heaven answered, but not without consequence. Each soul bears its own sin, came the reply. Yet something had changed. The anger had softened. Mercy had begun to move. Still, not all was restored. The people felt it. The invisible gifts they once carried, their strength, their divine protection, were quietly taken away. Even the garments of honor they had worn were stripped from them. And Moses saw it. He understood. God had forgiven, but not fully embraced. Saf. So Moses did something unexpected. He moved his tent far outside the camp, away from the people, away from the noise, away from the brokenness. If they are distant from God, he thought, then I too will stand apart. But something remarkable happened. Whenever someone longed for God, they walked to that distant tent, and not only people. It was said that even the heavens turned toward that place. The sun, the moon, the hosts above, they knew where God's presence rested, not in the center of power, but in a quiet place where a man prayed for others. Yet God was not pleased with Moses' distance. A voice came again. We had an understanding, you and I. When they anger you, I calm you. When they anger you, I calm you. When they anger me, you must calm me. What will become of them if we both turn away? Ah, ta. Moses listened. His anger faded because he realized something deeper. God had not abandoned his people, not completely. Ah, ta. Do not send an angel, he pleaded. Do not lead them from afar. If you truly forgive them, then walk with them. Again he prayed, not for a day, not for a moment, but for 40 days and 40 nights, without rest, without distraction, with only one purpose mercy. Ah! At last, when every argument had been spoken, Moses reached into the past. To Abraham, remember his trials. To Isaac, remember his sacrifice. To Jacob, remember his wandering. If this people has failed, let their fathers speak for them. Deemed. And then, with quiet boldness, he added, You once would have spared a city for 10 righteous souls. I stand before you now with 10. He counted them himself, the faithful leaders, and then gently, and the fathers who will rise again. That was the moment, not the arguments, not the logic, but remembrance, covenant, promise. And God answered, not with fire, not with judgment, but with presence. I will go with them. And refused to step away. The inscrutable ways of the Lord. The mountain had grown quiet, the thunder had faded, the fire no longer roared, and yet Moses remained still searching, still longing. For though he had spoken with God, though he had seen wonders beyond imagination, three questions still burned within his heart. One evening, in a moment of stillness, Moses spoke again. Lord, let your presence remain with your people always. He paused, then added, and let it not rest among those who turn away from you. These were bold requests, but they came from love. Then, after a silence that seemed to stretch across heaven itself, he whispered his deepest question. Teach me your ways. Why does the world seem so uneven? Why do the righteous sometimes suffer while the wicked prosper? Why are some blessed and others burdened without reason that we can see? Ah, tide? This question was different. It was not about Israel, it was about the mystery of life itself. Ah, tide? God did not answer immediately. Wait, came the gentle reply. This is not a question for a moment of anger. Let the storm pass, then I will answer. And so Moses waited. Ah, when the time came, God granted him the first two wishes fully. His presence would remain with Israel, and it would not dwell among those who rejected him. But the third request, that would only be answered in part. God began not with explanations but with a journey. He showed Moses vast storehouses, treasures beyond imagination. In these, God said, are the rewards of the faithful. Moses looked and saw one treasury filled for those who gave generously to others, another for those who cared for the abandoned, another for those who walked in quiet righteousness. Each treasure had a purpose, each reward a reason. Sup, its doors seemed endless. For whom is this? Moses asked, and God answered, these treasures you have seen are given to those who have earned them, but this one is for those who have not. Moses was silent. God continued, I show kindness even where it is not deserved. I give even where there is no claim to receive. And in that moment, Moses understood something, but not everything. Still, the question remained. Why, he wondered, do the unjust sometimes thrive? Why do the innocent suffer? God did the innocent suffer. God did not give him a direct answer. Instead, he gave him a vision. From the heights of Sinai, Moses saw a man approach a river. The man knelt to drink, and as he rose, his purse slipped from his side unnoticed. He walked away. Soon after, another man arrived. He saw the purse, picked it up, and quickly left. Then a third man came. Moments later, the first returned frantic, searching for what he had lost. Seeing the third man, he accused him, you took my money. The man denied it, but anger rose, and in that anger, the innocent man was struck down. Moses was shaken. This is injustice, he cried. The guilty walks free, and the innocent is slain. Show me why. And God answered, the one who found the purse only took what was once his. For long ago, the man who lost it had stolen it from him. And the one who was slain was not innocent as you think. In another time, he had taken a life, and now justice has come full circle. Ah, ta! Moses fell silent. What he had seen as chaos had hidden order. What he had judged in a moment stretched across lifetimes. God spoke again. You see only a fragment. I see the whole. And Tad opened yet another vision before him, generations unfolding like waves, wise men, prophets, leaders, the faithful and the fallen, each life, part of a greater story. Zap. But still, Moses longed to understand fully. Tell me the rule behind it all, he asked. Let me grasp how you govern the world. And God replied, you cannot know all my ways, but this you may understand. When I see those who have no claim, no merit, no inheritance, yet they turn to me in sincerity, I answer them. It was not a full answer, but it was enough to glimpse the heart behind the mystery. Yet one desire remained. Show me your glory, Moses asked. And this time God answered with both mercy and restraint. No one can see my full glory and live, but I will grant you a glimpse. He placed Moses within the shelter of a rock. Remain here, he said, and I will let my presence pass before you. All the hosts of heaven will move before you, and when you hear my name, know that I am near. But even then, there was a gentle reminder. When I first revealed myself to you in the flame that burned without consuming, you turned your face away. Now you wish to see, but not all things are given at once. Ah, a man who had seen more than any other, and yet still stood in awe of what he could not fully understand. Sort, and even the greatest among us are only given glimpses of the whole. Chapter 13. The 13 Attributes of God. High upon the mountain, hidden within the silence of stone, there was a cave. It was small, almost insignificant, yet it held a moment that would echo through all generations. Ekha! Moses stood within that cave, waiting. God had promised him something no human had ever truly seen. A glimpse, not of form, but of presence. A passing of divine glory. The air itself seemed to tremble. Even the angels grew restless. When they heard Moses' request, "Show me your glory," they were filled with outrage. "How can this be?" they cried. "We who serve day and night cannot behold it, and this man born of dust dares to ask?" Their voices burned like fire, and in their anger they moved to strike him down. But Moses did not fall, for an unseen hand covered him, protected him, held him between heaven's fire and earth's frailty. Tss, tss. Then something extraordinary happened. God descended, not in thunder this time, not in blazing fire, but gently, like a leader guiding a prayer, as though standing before a congregation, teaching them how to call upon him. And he spoke not to the heavens, but to Moses. Uh, when my people fail, when they lose their way, let them call upon me with these words. And then, slowly, deliberately, he revealed his nature not as power alone, but as mercy. I am the one who sustains all life. I am the one who shows mercy even when justice could prevail. I am the one who gives freely, who waits patiently, who remains faithful beyond what is deserved. I forgive, I restore, I continue to love, even when love is not returned. So, these were not just words, they were a path, a way back. Moses listened, his heart overwhelmed. And when he understood that God's patience extended even to those who fail, he did not hesitate. Then forgive them, he pleaded. Forgive your people for the sin of the calf, for their weakness, for their wandering hearts. Shah! And heaven answered with a softness greater than any storm, I have forgiven as you have asked. Shah! It was a moment of mercy, a moment that could have stretched across all time. Had Moses asked for forgiveness for every future failing, it might have been granted, but he asked for this moment. And so this moment was healed. That day became sacred, the 10th day of Tishri, a day not of fear but of return, of tears that would one day become joy. God spoke to his people, "These tears you shed today will not be forgotten. This day will be one of forgiveness for you, for your children, and for generations yet to come." Ah! And so, a rhythm was set into the life of the world. A day when brokenness meets mercy, when distance is closed, when hearts are made new again. Tap! But Moses, even in this moment of grace, felt the quiet sorrow. The tablets, the first ones, were gone. broken by his own hands. Who will speak for me now? He wondered. I stood for them, but who stands for me? Expect. And God answered, not with rebuke, but with promise, do not grieve. What was lost was only the beginning. The tablets you will now receive will carry more than commands. They will carry wisdom, stories, understanding, the living spirit of the law. Axiom. And so Moses prepared once more. At the start of the month, a trumpet sounded through the camp, a call not just of warning but of remembrance. Do not forget, it seemed to say, stay faithful, stay awake, secure. For 40 days Moses returned to the heights, between earth and heaven, between failure and forgiveness. Huh? And on the 10th day he came back, not empty handed, but carrying something deeper than stone, a covenant renewed, a people forgiven, a path restored. And from that day forward, whenever hearts would falter and voices would rise in sincere return, those 13 whispers of mercy would open the way back to God. The second tables, a story of mercy, wisdom, and renewal. The mountain was quiet this time. There were no thunderclaps, no blazing fire dancing across the heavens, no trembling crowds waiting below. When the first tablets had been given, the world itself seemed to pause in awe. But now the second gift came in silence. For God had said, there is a beauty in humility that noise can never carry. The first tablets had been shaped by the divine hand alone, radiant and perfect, but they had been shattered, broken in a moment of human failure. Now the second would be different. These would be carved by Moses himself, shaped by human effort, yet still filled with divine truth. The stone that made a prophet rich. God led Moses to a hidden quarry of dazzling stone brighter than anything the desert had ever seen. From this precious rock, Moses carved the new tablets. As he worked, fragments of the stone fell around him, glittering shards of unimaginable worth. These were not wasted, they became his. In this way, Moses, already rich in spirit, became rich in the world as well. For a true leader, it was said, must carry four treasures: wisdom, humility, strength, and the means to stand independent. And Moses now had them all. The gift meant for one, shared with all. At first, the wisdom inscribed upon these tablets, the Torah in its fullness, was meant only for Moses and his descendants. But Moses was not a man who kept light hidden. He shared everything. He taught the people not only the written words but the living meaning behind them, the stories, the laws, the questions yet to be asked. What he received in silence, he gave in generosity. And so, what could have belonged to one became the inheritance of a nation. For 40 days and nights, Moses remained on the mountain once more. He did not eat. He did not drink. Instead, he was sustained by something unseen, the nearness of God, a presence like light that nourished his very being. By day he learned, by night he repeated, engraved, remembered. He became a bridge between heaven and earth. When the writing was complete, Moses did something simple, almost unnoticed. He wiped his pen across his forehead, but the ink was no ordinary ink. It carried a trace of the divine. And from that moment on, a glow rested upon his face, a light that could not be dimmed. When Moses descended, the people saw him and stepped back in fear. Once they had stood unafraid before fire and thunder at the mountain. But now, after their failure, even this gentle radiance felt overwhelming. It was not Moses who had changed, it was them. Yet Moses calmed their hearts. He spoke gently, teaching them once again, guiding them step by step. He did not rush. First, he taught Aaron, then Aaron's sons, then the elders, then every single person. Each lesson was repeated, not once but 4 times until the words lived within them. Because truth is not learned in a moment. It is built layer by layer until it becomes part of the soul. One day, the people spoke with quiet sorrow. God has lifted you again, Moses. but we still feel the weight of our past. Moses carried their words to God, and God answered with compassion, "Count them, not as a ruler counts numbers, but as one counts something precious. Because what is counted is valued, and what is valued is loved." Even after their mistake, they were still His. The people feared what their atonement might cost. They imagined heavy penalties, impossible debts, but God did not ask for gold beyond reach, nor burdens too great to bear. Instead, He showed Moses a small koina half shekel. This is enough, not because the sin was small, but because mercy was greater. Then came a remarkable command: "Build me a sanctuary so that I may dwell among you." Not because God needed a house, but because the people needed a sign that they were forgiven, that they were not abandoned. At first they questioned, "How can the infinite dwell in something so small?" And God answered, "I do not ask for what is beyond you, only what you can give." So they built not just with gold and wood, but with willingness, with hearts restored. And so, the second tablets were not merely replacements for what had been lost, there was something deeper. The first had been perfect and broken. The second was shaped through effort, failure, forgiveness, and growth. And perhaps that is why they endured. The mountain held its silence, but the story was not yet finished. Before his final ascent, Moses did one last thing, not as a leader of a nation, but as a shepherd of souls. He blessed them, one by one, not by name, but by tribe, by future, by destiny yet to unfold. His words were not commands now, nor warnings carved in fire, but blessings carried like quiet hope. To some he gave strength, to others courage, to all a future. He no longer stood before them as the man who had brought them out of Egypt, but as the one who prepared them to go on without him. Because that is the final task of every true leader, to make themselves no longer needed. There was no farewell spoken aloud, no final gathering, no moment where the people could hold him back. Moses walked alone, up the mountain, into stillness, into the presence he had known all his life, and there, in a place no one else could reach, his journey ended, not in sorrow, but in peace. It is said that his passing was like a whisper, as gentle as a breath, as if the same voice that once called him from a burning bush now called him home. No one saw where he was laid to rest, no stone was raised, no path marked the place. And perhaps that too was part of the story, because if a grave had been known, people might have gathered around it and forgotten to walk forward. But Moses was never meant to be the destination, he was always meant to be the guide. Sapt. After Moses, the people mourned. For days the calm carried a quiet weight. The voice that had spoken for them, fought for them, stood between them and destruction. That voice was gone. But something else remained. Everything he had taught, everything he had lived, everything he had lived. The past did not disappear with him, it stretched onward. And another would lead them forward. Joshua, the one who had once stood beside him on the mountain, now stepping into a role shaped by everything he had witnessed. And so, the story of Moses does not end with his death, it ends with continuation, with the people still walking, with a promise still alive, with a legacy that could not be buried. Because some lives are not measured by where they finish, but by what continues after them. Path. Moses did not enter the promised land, but the promised land was never the measure of his life. The measure was this: he turned slaves into a people, he turned fear into faith, he turned a journey into a purpose, and in the end he left behind something greater than arrival, a way forward that would outlive him. A people still learning. They moved from place to place, guided by a presence they could not always understand. There were days of wonder, when food fell from the sky, when water flowed where there was none, when a cloud led them by day and fire by night. But there were also days of doubt. The people questioned, they feared, they forgot, And each time Moses stood in the space between heaven and earth, between justice and mercy, between a people's weakness and God's patience. The burden of leadership. It was not an easy path. Every complaint reached him. Every fear found its way to him. Every failure weighed upon him. And still he carried them, not because they were perfect, but because they were his to lead. There were moments when even he grew weary, moments when the burden felt too heavy for one man. Yet he did not turn back. Sir, the moment that changed the ending, then came a moment small in action but great in consequence. The people cried out again for water. God had given a simple command: speak to the rock. But Moses, worn by years of struggle, struck it instead. Water still came. The people still drank. But something unseen had shifted, and in that quiet shift came a truth that could not be undone. He would lead them forward, but he would not enter the land. Toward the edge of promise still, the journey continued. Step by step, year by year, the desert slowly gave way, and at last the land they had dreamed of came into view. It was real, close, waiting. Moses saw it. He understood what it meant, not as a loss, but as completion, because his purpose had never been to arrive, it had been to lead. Thank you for watching.